Hello and welcome to this virtual session. We're glad you can join us today. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping items we'd like to go over with you now. Firstly, you can resize the webinar windows to cater to your viewing preferences. You can maximise, minimise and drag the windows to your preferred viewing size. If you look at the bottom middle of your screen, you can click on the widgets that you'll need to get the most out of this virtual experience. Secondly, Microsoft specialists are on hand to answer your questions in real time. So feel free to type in your questions using the Q&A window and we'll answer them as soon as we can. Lastly, we've provided some additional resources for you to supplement your learning. You can access them by clicking on the links in this section. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our speakers.
Welcome everyone to our Microsoft Virtual Training Day. My name is Melissa and I'm a Microsoft Technical Trainer, which means every day I have the amazing opportunity to connect with learners like you, app makers and citizen developers who build solutions using the Power Platform. Over the next few hours, we will cover the essentials of all of the tools available in the low-code toolbox that is the Power Platform, and how you can make the best use of them. So let's get started. To get started in Module 1, we'll go over the basic components and features of the Power Platform. That's going to include Power BI, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, Power Pages, and Dataverse. Then we'll talk about the value of the Power Platform and how it can create some amazing solutions. And finally, of course, how you can pull it all together. Keep in mind, this is just the introduction. And in our other modules, we'll be taking a deeper dive into each one of these tools and how they all work together to solve problems and help you accomplish your goals. Let's start off with the first big question. What is the Power Platform? Well, at the core, the Power Platform is built on 4 products. There's Power BI for when you need to build dashboards and reports around your data. We have Power Apps, enabling you to build apps for your employees. Power Automate does just what it sounds. You can automate all kinds of things, from API automation to robotic process automation. We have Power Virtual Agents, which allows you to build chatbots for all kinds of purposes, including transactional or Q&A based. We also have one more that we're going to be introducing now for the first time, and that's Power Pages. More on that later. Now, making all of the magic happen behind the scenes, we have a few different pieces. First, data connectors. These enable us to build apps or workflows on almost anything on the web, or Microsoft products like SharePoint Online, Excel, or SQL. And you can even connect to non-Microsoft products like SAP or Salesforce or Dropbox. And then we have AI Builder. That allows you to build low-code artificial intelligence. You can just drag and drop and upload images to work with image detection or documents doing OCR. It also works with predictions and natural language processing. And the last component of these 3 is the Dataverse. The Dataverse allows you to build very sophisticated databases in just one click. But it's not just a database. It combines the power of Azure SQL, Blob Storage, and Cosmos DB in one single instance where you can model structured and unstructured data. And if you need it, you can also apply role-based access control and build a relational database with different sources of data. There's so much flexibility here for any solution you or your team might need. Now that brings me to the business value of the Power Platform. So we have all of these amazing tools, but there are a lot of variables organizations have to consider when it comes to using the right tools just to get the job done. Something businesses have to be aware of is the changing workforce expectations. If we look at today's workforce, more and more young people are starting out with experience in technology and collaborating through social media. In order to best leverage their abilities, organizations need to be able to deliver more custom, streamlined, and collaborative digital experiences. Additionally, because everything moves at such a fast pace, it's crucial that organizations are able to move quickly. If you're taking months to build and roll out solutions, you're already behind the competition and you're probably taking time away from your own success. These days, time is just a luxury we don't have. So if we know that our business strategies and needs are going to change rapidly, we need to be able to build solutions quickly. And finally, money. It's always a concern, especially if you're trying to manage dedicated or customized application development. Not only does building a custom application take a lot of time, but we also know that time is money. So that gets expensive pretty quickly. And even after you factor in the costs to make your app, you need to consider how much it takes to maintain it. With low or no code tools, those costs can be significantly reduced. All right, I know you're already excited about the Power Platform. Now that we've explored the business value, let's go over each of these platform components. We'll start with Power Apps, which is designed to help you build and consume solutions for web and mobile apps. If you can imagine a situation in your team or your department where an app could make your lives better, you'll be able to build that here. That can mean highly customized task or role-based Canvas apps, and you can use data from one or multiple sources. So if you use data sources like Excel spreadsheets, or maybe PDF documents or SharePoint lists, you can combine all of those data sources into a single app, and essentially you'll just be making your job much easier. If you're looking for something based more on your data model and business processes, you'll be able to generate immersive, model-driven apps. A really fast way to get started is to build your app straight from data in your Dataverse. Finally, ease of access is key here. So if you want to access your app on a desktop PC or on your cell phone, you can. You can even embed your app into another solution, or it can just stand on its own. I cannot emphasize enough that this is a configure once, deploy everywhere approach. Now that you have your apps, let's talk about how you can build flows to automate and integrate business processes with Power Automate. It works between all kinds of applications and services. So you can have a trigger in one place and actions in other places. Your flows can be as simple or as complex as you need, with different options like branches and loops. And instead of having to open all kinds of different tools, you'll be able to trigger actions or grant approvals and get notifications from whatever tools you're already working in. And if you have legacy or on-premises applications, or even if you've built your own, Power Automate works there too. The next amazing tool on our list is Power BI, which enables you to gain insight from your data regardless of where it lives. Even if you work on a relatively small team or project, your data may not be stored in the same location. With Power BI, you can connect to all of your data and get a consolidated view across your business through a single pane of glass. We also know that data is always changing. This is where live dashboards and interactive reports are really useful because they're easy to consume on your cell phone or tablet or through the web. Remember when we talked about how Power Apps can integrate with data from all kinds of sources? That includes Power BI. In other words, you can make your apps smarter by infusing insights from your data. And of course, that's going to drive action. So let's say you build a dashboard. You can make that available in your Power App, or the other way around. You can put an app into that dashboard and create digital feedback loops that will always keep your information updated wherever it's located. The Power Platform is all about making your life easier. And a great way to do that is with Power Virtual Agents. I want you to think about the last time you interacted with a bot. Maybe you needed to submit a support ticket or you just had a question about a product. That bot has a bank or list of potential questions and answers, and that list has to come from somewhere, usually subject matter experts. Now, instead of having your subject matter experts or SMEs compose the bank of all types of questions and answers and then send it over to a developer to build a bot, why not just have them build their own through Power Virtual Agents? And they don't have to be developers or data scientists because they will have a guided, no-code graphical interface. Your virtual agent will also be able to act on your customer's behalf, and it can be integrated with hundreds of services and systems out of the box or through custom workflows. And if you want to make sure that your virtual agent is performing the way that it's supposed to, you can keep an eye on it through conversational metrics and dashboards. And if you need to make any changes, you can get in-depth AI-driven insights to improve your bot's performance. So regardless of whether you deploy your bot to your employees or external users, you can gather so much more information on the sessions that went well and maybe those that can be improved. And then you have smart recommendations on how you can make it all happen. And finally, the Power Platform offers an amazing no-code web design experience with Power Pages. You may have previously known this tool as Power Apps Portals. Power Pages is a low-code development and hosting platform. And with it, you'll be able to build modern and data-centric websites. You'll also know that they're secure, and your website can be anonymous or authenticated if you want your users to be able to interact with data held in the Dataverse. It works very similarly to Power Apps in that you have the same drag and drop experience, but your result is a well-built and interactive website. Just like with our other tools, whether you're a low-code maker or even a professional developer, you'll be able to design, configure, and publish your website in the way that you need to so that your customers and partners and communities will be engaged. Now, this session doesn't cover Power Pages in detail, but I encourage you to find out more about this amazing tool on Microsoft Learn. Now that we've gone over all 4 of these power tools, let's spend just a moment on the Dataverse. Dataverse is both a scalable data service and an app platform. So that means that you'll be able to use it for all kinds of things. Not only can you securely store and manage data from multiple sources, you'll also be able to integrate that data in your business applications and services. Dataverse is the common currency that enables the components of Power Platform to work together. It's the foundation that enables the consolidation, display, and manipulation of data. And it's also seamlessly integrated with Dynamics 365, Office 365, and Azure. And at the same time, it's being augmented with data from industry partners. And this is where most of the magic happens for large-scale apps, because the Dataverse comes with the common data model. Let's say you have an appointment on your calendar. That definition of the appointment is the same in your CRM and in your Dataverse. So you don't have any complex integration challenges when you want to make multiple systems talk to each other. Okay, we now have our Power Platform tools. We have the whole collection. The Dataverse is storing and managing our data. But how do we get these tools to talk to each other or even to other apps and systems? That's where data connectors come in. Connectors are native to Power Automate and Power Apps, but you can also use the same connectors in Logic Apps. And then if you don't happen to find what you need in the list of over 450 existing connectors out of the box, you can create a custom connector. Here's a really great example. Let's say you have a connection from an open data provider that includes travel information about an area, and you want to connect that with weather from another data provider. You can build custom connectors for both of those sources, bring that information into your app, and then as a result, you will have a better travel assistant for your employees when they need to travel abroad. And if you've already built your own app, you can extend it by calling a publicly available API or a custom API that you might be hosting in a cloud provider, such as Azure or AWS or Google Cloud. So if you build a lot of data assets outside of the Microsoft Cloud, you can still connect to those too. And finally, you even have options when it comes to creating your own custom connectors. You can use a blank custom connector or start from an open API definition or from a Postman collection. So if you already have those technologies deployed in other places, using other API managers, you can just take that Postman, open it into your custom connector in the Power Platform, and then reuse the whole thing without having to rewrite your entire connector. Let's wrap up Module 1 by going over how truly flexible the Power Platform is. When it's time to build a more comprehensive solution, you'll need to be able to use the different components of the Power Platform together. And sometimes it'll even go beyond the platform itself. So how can you do that? Well, the best way to get started with a low-code project is from the data and services layer. Your solutions can be built on an Excel spreadsheet or a SharePoint list, or even react to your emails and tasks. Maybe you want to connect to your clients in CRM or your products in your ERP. Or if you want a one-click export to your data lake. These are all made possible through that native integration to Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, and Azure. Now let's consider what happens if your data isn't in the cloud. Maybe it's in an on-premises database. The on-premises data gateway allows you to connect to any legacy data source in your organization without needing to migrate it to the cloud. If you're already using Power BI, you probably have gateways deployed in different data sources that you can also reuse with apps or workflows. And if you need to build something new, maybe you need a relational database and other components like encryption or role-based access control. The Dataverse is the best solution. It's the fastest way to model and secure your company data and then make it available within the Power Platform and beyond. Most of the time, when you have an idea for an app, you start with the app, and then you have to go connect with the people in your organization in charge of databases, and you tell them, hey, I need a SQL database. Maybe then a week later, you finally get your database, but then you still have to work hard to model your data and then to build it out. And then you still have to deal with security rules and how you're going to share it. All of that is made easier thanks to the Dataverse. You can do it yourself, and it will compose everything you need. If that's a SQL database or even Cosmos DB in the cloud, and then you just build your app on top of that. And remember our connectors? You can connect to over 400 Microsoft and non-Microsoft web services, including Zendesk, Twitter, SAP, and Salesforce. There's too many to list. But you can have tabular data for certain items or systems or actions in other systems to build apps or automation. You can also connect to any REST or HTTP endpoints using custom connectors. So once you have your data covered, we want to start looking at ways that you can save time and make your business processes more efficient. And we can do that by automating tasks. Your managers can now approve or reject any request from any system across your organization in a centralized dashboard or within emails or chats. App makers can infuse artificial intelligence everywhere with AI models ranging from prediction to optical character recognition or from object detection to sentiment analysis. And the AI Builder guided experience means that they can accomplish all of that without having to write a single line of code. Let's say, for example, you receive a new RFP in your inbox. Power Automate can extract the PDF and its content, put the file in Dropbox or OneDrive, and create a new opportunity in Salesforce or Dynamics 365 with the details extracted from the RFP. Then it can even create a channel in Slack or Teams with key internal stakeholders, assigning them tasks to finally send the details in your ERP system like SAP or Dynamics 365. Finally, your warehouse team can prepare the pallet and ship it to your client. These are all different things that you can automate with our digital process automation and business process management capabilities. And if at any stage in the process you can't connect to a system through APIs or when you have to do complex manipulation, the robotic process automation capabilities of Power Automate can handle that for you. Now that you have your data sources, if you've built your processes, it becomes super simple to create amazing user experiences, and there's even flexibility there too. You can make a rich mobile or desktop app and then embed it in tools that you already use. Or if you want to share your processes with external users, you can just use Power Pages. One of my favorite uses is being able to build mixed reality without needing to be a video game developer. Power Virtual Agents or bots work best and most effectively when users can communicate with natural language. PVA can crawl your documents and website to create content, and it offers an easy to use authoring experience for your subject matter experts. You'll be able to make better decisions from your data with Power BI reports and dashboards. And it can connect to virtually anything. You can use artificial intelligence to provide insights without having to manually create new charts and graphs every time. And finally, the Power Platform lives where you work. That means that you can create and use apps and chatbots without leaving Teams. You can extend Project for the Web through Dataverse or launch flows directly from Dynamics 365 and Excel. For example, let's say you have an Excel sheet with a list of attendees for an event. You can create a flow that will automatically send an email to those attendees. All of these features share the same governance and security principles and comply with policies that you already have in place. When we bring all of these tools together, it means that your employees are going to save tons of time, not only creating apps and processes, but more importantly, making them available to a wider set of people in your organization. So let's pull it all together. We talked about the business value of the Power Platform as a whole because of all of the amazing things that you can do and solutions you can build, from custom applications with Power Apps to automated processing with Power Automate. We're saving time and making your business more efficient. And we are helping our end users and folks that may not be data specialists by building out easy to understand reports with Power BI and engaging chatbots with Power Virtual Agents. In summary, you have a point and click approach, which means you can get started very easily analyzing and visualizing data. You're also able to build and deploy a custom app on the device of your preference. You'll be using connectors to send information to and from your data source. And finally, with Power Automate, you can build flows that are as simple or as complex as you would like. Now, this is the end of our first module, and I hope that this was a good introduction for you to all of the amazing things the Power Platform can do for us. All right, everyone, let's get started on Module 2, which is all about Microsoft Dataverse. This module is pretty short, but it's very important because the Dataverse not only allows you to secure your data, but you can also make it available at scale very easily. I'll actually show you how easy it is to create tables and connect to your data. So in this module, we're going to explain some terms including environments, tables, columns, and relationships. I'll also go over Dataverse for Teams. And finally, we'll talk about business rules and the Power Platform Admin Center. Under the hood of the Dataverse, everything runs around different APIs. So our Power Platform tools like Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and AI Builder can connect to it natively. That also means that it works for non-Microsoft tools like Xamarin or Visual Studio. When we look at every layer of the Dataverse, we have security at the core. That will always be there regardless of how you connect to it. We have authentication that uses Azure Active Directory and authorization with role-based access control. And when you need to keep track of any changes that might be happening in your Dataverse, you'll be able to audit them. Now, it's pretty likely that your organization has compliance policies or regulations that you have to adhere to. And when it comes to auditing, you want the process to be as smooth as possible. And that's why auditing logs can be managed in the M365 Compliance Center in Purview, which means when you need to make sure your Power Platform is compliant, you're looking in the same place as your other Microsoft solutions. The next layer we have is logic. Dataverse allows you to easily apply business logic at the data level. Regardless of how a user is interacting with the data, the same rules apply. And these rules can be related to all kinds of things like duplicate detection or business rules or workflows. And this is important, especially in today's environment where we have administrators and citizen developers and where potentially there may be a lot of decentralized activities. We talked earlier about how the Power Platform is a no or low code solution. So you might have a citizen developer who isn't technically skilled enough to implement all of those rules within the app itself as they are making it. Now, that might require them to build more complexity into their app than they know how to do. So, having all of our rules at the data layer means that they can't be violated in any way. They will always be compliant. Now, that's going to save your developers a lot of time, and your administrators can sleep at night knowing that their solutions are compliant. Now, our next layer is data, which is really at the heart of Dataverse. Of course, you need to be able to control and shape your data in a way that suits your business needs. This starts with being able to catalog and discover different types of data and being able to find it easily. Data modeling means it works like a true relational database. Reporting shows us the usage of our database and the API calls, so you can monitor the use of your data to a very granular extent. Data validation ensures our data stays clean. And then we have the common data model, which standardizes the schema. We'll talk more about that shortly. This control ensures that your data looks the way that you want it to, regardless of how it's being used. Now, from a storage perspective, we have this relational database capability, which is great for structured data, but we also have files and blobs, which will help you manage images and documents. All of this is stored in the Azure cloud, which means that you don't have to worry about where your data lives or how it scales. That also means that we can work with semi-structured data. And when we need to find something, we can use AI embedded capabilities. There's also a native export to data lakes. So if you gather a lot of data into your Dataverse for operational or transactional data that you might be generating every day, you can easily put that into a data lake using Azure Synapse. And finally, we have all kinds of integration with eventing and webhooks and data exports, where you can connect all of those things together. Maybe you have IoT devices in the field. You'll be able to feed information from them, and if there is an alert, there's eventing, and you can act on that directly from your database. The Dataverse box is pretty full, isn't it? Now that we've talked about some of the amazing capabilities of Dataverse, let's go into more detail on how it's structured. We mentioned in Module 1 that Microsoft Dataverse is a primary component for the entire Power Platform. It's not just a database, though. It's a cloud-based, low-code data service and app platform. Now, in general, when you build an application or a report, or if you automate any business process, you'll need to pull existing data from somewhere, and then you need to place to store your new data. For the Power Platform, Dataverse is not only going to act as a central data repository or a home for your data, but it's also what enables us to structure our data in business logic. So we can integrate that in business applications. And when I make an app or a flow or a Power BI report, they can work together via the same Dataverse. Although Dataverse itself is not a database, in some ways it acts very similarly to one. If we think about a SQL database, for example, we have rows and columns and tables, and those are going to act as this logical structure for our data. We have that same logical structure in Dataverse, rows and columns that make up tables. I will talk about those more in just a few moments. Now, I also want to introduce the common data model. The standard table design in Dataverse is based on it. And this is so valuable because we need to be able to share data language across business and analytical apps. Many businesses struggle to attain a complete view of their customer interactions and operations because they're not able to connect information trapped in internal silos. This is where the Open Data Initiative comes in. The core focus of the Open Data Initiative is to eliminate data silos and enable a single view of your customer, which means companies are better able to govern their data and support privacy and security initiatives. Let's explore how the Dataverse implements the common data model. So we have this metadata system, which makes it possible for data and its meaning to be shared across applications and business processes. And we also have a set of standardized extensible data schemas that Microsoft and its partners have published. When we put those together, we're able to simplify the creation, aggregation, and analysis of data, which means your app makers are able to create solutions that work across systems. For example, you can have an app that is designed for cleaning your building, and you can have another app that keeps records of all of the assets that you have in your building. The apps don't have to rely on two different databases. They can take the same data from the same Dataverse using the same data model, whether that's through using the common data model or you can even customize your own. But then the users can have different experiences based on if they need to clean the building versus the other users who may be responsible for ordering or repairing assets like chairs or tables. And finally, that also means we can foster better collaboration across industries because we don't have to worry about structuring our data in a way that will meet another organization's systems. Now, I do want to spend a moment on Dataverse for Teams. Just like it sounds, it's going to work for you when you want to create apps and flows and more inside of Teams. When you create a Power App in a team, a new Dataverse is created specifically for that team. This is a great way for new users to get started building their own practical solutions. And because it's in Teams, you already know that your organization's permissions are applied when it comes to guest or external users having access. I do want to make a note, though, that any solution built in this environment can be some work to move into a different environment, and not every table will be a part of Dataverse for Teams. So if you need more granular control, security, and governance and capacity, and you know that in advance, you may consider upgrading Dataverse for Teams to Dataverse. Next, we have some crucial components of Dataverse: tables and columns. When you are building your data structure, you want to consider what type of table you're organizing your data in. Just like they sound, standard tables are going to be pretty standard. They're the base set of tables that are created for every instance of a Dataverse database. So if you have a Dataverse, you already have standard tables. And these are built on the common data model. So you'll have some pretty familiar fields already populated, like accounts and contacts and activities. You also can have custom tables. These are created for a specific business application, so that will be unique to whatever your organization needs. Now, your business may justify many or no custom tables, and there aren't any limitations for who can create one, but users do need to be assigned proper security permissions to do so. Now, for the most part, standard tables are going to be exactly what you need, and you can customize them in some ways. For example, you can rename a table if that makes the table more understandable in the context of your solution. So we just recommend that you always review the list of standard tables and then make sure that it's not going to meet your needs before you create a custom or complex table. And of course, next we have columns, which are pretty straightforward, especially if you've worked in Excel. Your column is going to have pieces of information which will be related to the data type. For example, we have date columns, or I might have a product column or an address column. And those are going to restore their respective types, their products and addresses. Every column will have a type that defines the way you store the data. That gives you more flexibility because instead of just text, you can have choices or even auto-calculated fields. Now, on to the next topic about Dataverse, relationships. So we know that all of our data is stored in tables, which consist of rows and columns. In most business solutions, we aren't going to have just one table that contains all of the potential information we might need. Tables that relate to one another have a relational connection. Relationships between tables exist in many different forms, but the two most common are one-to-many and many-to-many, both of which are supported by Dataverse. One-to-many relationships are also known as parent-child relationships. An example of this would be an invoice. The invoice table would be the parent, and the individual line items would be part of the child table. Now, an invoice can have 0, 1, or many line items or child rows, but the line item will always be related to just one invoice or parent record. Similarly, you can think of an account with contacts or a project and tasks. Those are examples of one-to-many relationships. But in some cases, you will have many-to-many relationships. So for instance, a contact can attend multiple events, and an event can have multiple contacts. Keep in mind that these are options that give you flexibility to organize your data to suit your business needs. Now, there might be some circumstances where one database works really well, but another one doesn't. For example, perhaps if you have a very sales-oriented database, it might not make sense to have support or troubleshooting related information there. That, of course, might be related to the data we're working with, but also to the people who need access to the database. And this is where we have environments. Environments are used to store, manage, and share all kinds of things, including your data, apps, and flows. Something I want to highlight is that an environment can have only one dataverse. And this is really important, not only from a data management perspective, but also in terms of security and access. When you create an environment, it's only usable in that Azure Active Directory tenant, which means only users in that tenant will have access to the Dataverse. So if you're storing important human resources data, you want to make sure that only the right HR employees are able to access it. You'll just configure those options for the environment. And then, of course, you can have a production environment for sales or customer service data as well. And the last thing I want to point out about environments, relates to data residency. When you create an environment, the data stored there is bound by a geographic location. Microsoft has data centers all over the world, and when you select a region, you are determining where your data is being physically stored. This is really important in terms of compliance. If your organization has legal requirements to store data in specific locations, for example, Canadian healthcare records are legally required to be held in Canada. So if you are operating a multinational healthcare organization, you would consider creating a separate environment for your Canadian patient data, therefore differentiating it from US or European records. Now keep in mind that your tenant can have more than one environment, and you'll organize them based on your unique business needs to meet security and access requirements. You can also avoid conflict of interest or even to remain compliant with data residency laws. Now we're almost done with Module 2, but we don't want to pass up business rules. Business rules allow for the application of business logic at the data layer instead of the app layer. What's really beneficial here is that you're saving tons of time while remaining compliant. Those business rules are applicable at the Dataverse level, so each instance of Dataverse might have different business rules. Business rules are usually defined for a table and apply to all forms, but you can also define them for a specific model-driven form. We have some examples here of some business rules. We have set column values, clear column values, and validate data and show error messages. So you set a trigger and a series of actions. It's almost like building a workflow, and then this information will happen in real time in front of your users without them having to manually save their record. And that brings me to the last topic of Module 2, which is all about the Power Platform Admin Center. This is where most of the administrative settings are going to be found. Now, if you are an administrator, we recommend that you take some time to look at all of these administrative options before allowing any and all employees to build apps or flows or anything else. You want to make sure that you're setting the boundaries of your organization around environments and strategy, data loss prevention, policy, and role-based access control. You may also decide that there are some settings or options that you want to disable for your users. In terms of navigating around the Power Platform Admin Center, you'll find it to be pretty similar to other Microsoft interfaces. We have a menu on the left that displays what our options are. For example, environments would list all of the instances of Dataverse. Under Analytics, you can see how your resources are being used in your environment, and if you select resources, you can view and assign capacity to your environment. So when you create flows between multiple systems, this is where you'll be able to manage that connection and see how much information is passing through. And finally, we have policies. And this might actually be the place you go to first before you enable access to the Power Platform for your users. You want to make sure that users are only able to use the connectors that are appropriate for your business. And really, this is related to your data loss prevention approach as well. And that concludes Module 2, where we talked all about the Dataverse. We went over how you can connect easily to all aspects of the Microsoft Power Platform so that you can fully control, automate, and strengthen your business. We also identified some key terms like tables, columns, relationships, and environments. And finally, your goal should be to make your data work for you so that you can get the most of it by splitting it up into logical chunks. Now, I know for me, the best way to really understand how something works is by seeing it in action. So let me show you what it looks like to create a data model. The Power Platform works best when you can imagine how it solves problems for all kinds of organizations. So throughout this course, we will build applications and perform automation to help the Contoso College administration accomplish their goals. Contoso College is an educational organization with multiple buildings on campus. At this time, when visitors come to campus, their visits are documented by hand and uploaded manually into a shared Excel sheet. That's a lot of work. Campus administration would like to modernize this process and require anyone visiting to be pre-registered by their hosts. They also need to be able to collect and analyze data about the visits across the entire campus. So let's work together to help Contoso College accomplish this much better process. So we know that Contoso College has a big challenge here. Let's help them out first by creating a data model. This is going to enable them to interact with their data and utilize it in all of our Power Platform tools. I want to make sure that my data model is built out in Dataverse because I plan to use this for a Canvas app, a model-driven app, Power Automate, and a Power Virtual Agent. So I'm going to start off here at office.com, and then I will navigate to my Power Apps portal. You can also just go directly to make.powerapps.com, but I really like to start from the portal because it's my one-stop shop for not only all of my M365 tools, but also Power Platform. I'm going to select the waffle icon in the upper left-hand corner, and then I will choose Power Apps. If you don't see it right away in your app list, you can just select All Apps. When I select it, it opens up in a new tab. Now that I'm in my Power Apps portal, let's do a quick tour. In the upper right-hand corner, I have my account information and settings, and of course, the help option. You'll also notice that my environment is listed here as Contoso, and it's indicating that this is the default environment. You might remember an environment is used to store, manage, and share your organization's business data, apps, and flows, and it's created under your Azure Active Directory tenant. If I select it, I can change environments if I need to work on a different project. Remember, your environment can only have one Dataverse. So if I'd like to create another one, perhaps for development or testing, I can do that in the Power Platform admin portal. I'm going to stick to this environment for right now. Next, we'll take a look at the left-hand navigation. At the top, we have our home, which gives me the shortcut to create a new app, as well as to view all of the apps that I've already made. We'll exit out of our environment and review our home screen. So here we can start from a blank app or Dataverse or SQL. We also have shortcuts to Microsoft Learn. I highly recommend that you take a look at these amazing free resources. We can get started with Power Apps. You can author a basic formula to change properties, or you can work with external data in a Power Apps Canvas app. Now, on our home, we also have a list of all of our apps here. But if you'd like to navigate to each one of these components individually, they're also listed in our left-hand navigation pane. Now, in our scenario for Contoso College, we want to start building our data model. So I'm going to select Dataverse and then Tables. Now, I already have my Dataverse created, and this is why we see some of our standard tables. You'll even notice that they're indicated underneath the table type column. You'll see we have some pretty familiar ones, for example, account or address or contact. But if any of the standard tables don't meet your needs, you can also just choose the option toward the upper left to create a new table. Let me show you what that looks like. Once I select the option, I'll be able to create a display name for my table. And if I would like to, I can modify any other of our advanced options. For right now, I'll keep it simple and name it Power Platform Demo. Now that my table is ready, you'll notice that I already have some columns. If I want to see more, I can see the existing columns here, and you'll find those pretty recognizable column types. I'm going to select columns. So for example, we can see created by, or modified on. You'll see these pretty frequently in other tools like SharePoint. If I don't see what I need, I can choose to add a new column here. Now, I can add the relevant information for the data that will be stored in my column. Currently, we have our data type is a single line of text, and we also have our text format. But if I'd like to store any information about dates, I can type date for our display name, and then I can change my data type to date and time. And you'll notice that my format option has also updated. And if I'd like to, I can just select date only. Now, we also can choose to make this required or optional. We'll talk about forms later on, but if it's required, then your users won't be able to submit the form unless it's completed. We have so many options, and remember, this is still from a standard table type. Depending on your business needs, you may decide to create custom tables. Once our columns have been added, we can then import our data. Now, in our scenario for Contoso, some of the employees at the college have already been collecting information about visitors manually, and they've had to add it to their shared Excel sheet. So we already have a data set. Let's take a look at what they've collected so far. I have this stored in my OneDrive for Business, so I'm going to go navigate to the Excel file. Now we're off to a good start. We have some valuable information in our columns indicating things like visit dates and other details. Now, to save us a bit of time here, I've already taken the information in this table and I've imported my data into Dataverse. So let's review what that looks like. I'm going to navigate back to my Power Apps portal. And then we'll go to look at our existing tables. And let's check out our Contoso College visits. Now, you'll notice I already have some data here. I have a column that has our visit name, I have when it was created, and 23 additional columns. Now, remember, those are including the default columns added from our standard table, but the ones that we've imported from our Excel sheet. So you'll see that we have things like our actual end, our actual start for the visits that have already been recorded and uploaded into Excel. If I'd like to, I can just choose to change my view to view those. I will just check these boxes here under Show Existing Column and then Save. In our other solutions, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents will be able to interact with and even add to this same data set through the power of the Dataverse. Now remember, importing your information or data is quite straightforward. We've already built that table, so then I would just choose the option at the top to say Import Data from Excel. Or if I have my data stored in another location, I can choose Import Data and I'll be given a variety of options. Remember, we have over 450 connectors, so I'm sure wherever your data is being stored, you'll be able to import that into your tables and then get started working with Dataverse. With this, we've achieved creating our data model. I hope you learned a lot in this module and that the demonstration there helped to reinforce just how easy it is to get started with building your data. We're going to take a 10-minute break and I'll see you back for Module 3, which is all about Power Apps. now it's time for our third module, which is all about Power Apps. First, we'll do an introduction to Power Apps, and then we'll go over building both a Canvas and a model-driven app. Let's start with a deeper dive into Power Apps and the business value it creates. In Module 1, we already explored the Power Platform. So in this lesson, we're going to take a deeper dive into Power Apps specifically, and we'll talk a bit more about the business value that it creates. And finally, I'll also introduce our customer stories and highlight our case study from Heathrow Airport. This study demonstrates how one of the world's largest airports is digitizing its processes using Power Apps. Let's start out with what Power Apps can do for you. There are all kinds of ways Power Apps can help improve business processes as well as customer and employee experiences. For example, you might have legacy business processes that are bogging your employees down that need to be modernized. Or perhaps you're still moving information around using a shared Excel workbook or even paper forms. Or maybe you want to be able to perform business processes from different devices like your laptop or your cell phone. The reasons why you might decide to implement Power Apps are endless. And if you're not sure it's a good option for your organization, later on, I'm going to show you our customer stories. This is where you can even find inspiration from other companies and organizations. The first thing I want to highlight, though, is the ease of access. You don't have to be an application developer to get started, because Power Apps operates on a low or no-code platform for building your apps. Instead, we use a visual editor similar to PowerPoint to create the visuals of our app, and then we create actions with formulas similar to those in an Excel workbook. When we talk about working with data where it lives, that means if you have an Excel sheet in your OneDrive or a list in your SharePoint or a Dataverse database, you won't need to change the source of the data in order to interact with your app. We know that every problem will have its own unique solution. So that's why we have Canvas apps, which are like a normal application that you might imagine. And then we have model-driven apps, which are built from data in Microsoft Dataverse. The core of model-driven apps is the business flow or the process within it. And you can even add artificial intelligence to your app through AI Builder. AI can do all sorts of things that take your apps to the next level. One example here is about the prediction model, which you can use to predict a yes or no answer based on historical data. I do want to make a note that although this module is geared toward business users with little background in computer science and coding, Power Apps does have advanced functionality. So if you're a seasoned developer, you have the flexibility to design complex applications as well. Let's expand on each of these different app types. I'm going to start with Canvas apps. These are a great option when you want to build an app from a blank canvas. We start by choosing the screen size, tablet or mobile. We give it a name, and then we're ready to go with a beautiful blank canvas. It's kind of like drawing or painting. You just imagine what you want to accomplish, and then you can virtually build that logical structure. And then we'll leverage different functions like colors and color blocks to draw them on the canvas. I think of it about like building a PowerPoint from scratch. And when it comes to interacting with the data in your app, we start with adding data sources. Once we do that, our Canvas app will generate a group of pages by default. And we can work on that, or we can choose to create totally different pages based on whatever we need. Then we drag and drop various controls and add the desired functionality by writing Excel-style formulas. Canvas apps really do provide you complete flexibility when building your apps. Next, we have model-driven apps. These are especially well suited for processes that are data dense, and they make it easy for users to move between related records. For example, if you need an app to help you manage a complex process like onboarding new employees or managing a sales process, a model driven app is a great choice. While they are called model driven apps, you may also think of them as data model driven apps because without a data model housed in Microsoft Dataverse, you can't create a model driven app. Using the app designer, you can build apps that are simple or complex. And once your setup is completed, Power Apps will build you a great looking and fully functional app that enables you to act on and interact with your data. And with model driven apps, you don't need to worry about choosing the app size. It works on mobile or tablet with no extra effort, extra work by you. Now, I want to point out that unlike with Canvas app development, where you can design every component of your app layout, with a model driven app, a lot of the layout is determined for you and it's largely designated by the different components that you add to the app. Now, the core of model driven apps is the metadata and the business flow or the process within it. As a creator, you work with the data layer inside of Dataverse to define the relationships, the forms, the views, the business rules, and more. That means that you have control over your business results without writing all of the formulas yourself. Defining and enforcing consistent business processes is a key aspect of model-driven app design. And that's because consistent processes help ensure that your app users are able to focus on their work and not worry about having to remember to perform a set of manual steps. And those processes can be simple or complex as well, and they often change over time. And finally, understanding the needs of the user is the most important step. You can also add artificial intelligence to your app without a single line of code. You'll be able to use a wizard-based interface instead of having to learn a whole new coding language or create complex machine learning models. Currently, we have 4 AI models available with AI Builder. Just like it sounds, the prediction model predicts whether or not something will happen based on previous data history. You can build prediction models to answer all kinds of questions. For example, will a lead become a customer? Or will a project be profitable? Or even will a customer churn based on their activity? The form processor model extracts text from an image like the business card reader. The object detector model identifies objects from a picture and then can tell you if it's a specific product or item. And then it'll even give you a count of the number of objects present. And finally, we have text classification, which categorizes text by its meaning, making it easier to analyze. This AI Builder capability is so useful because not only does it live directly in your Power Apps, you can build in some really amazing features. For example, if you have a business card, you scan that and extract the information from it directly into your CRM. Or if you want to take an inventory of products in your warehouse, you can use the object detector model to get an accurate count. The choice is up to you and your business needs. So now we have all of these amazing options with Canvas apps and model-driven apps and artificial intelligence integration. And you have the ability to control the layers and levels of security to ensure all of your policies and business criteria are met. You might be looking for some inspiration for the kinds of apps that you can create. And this is where I recommend you look at our customer stories. You can find all kinds of real-world use cases and scenarios for the Power Platform. Our customer stories can be found at aka.ms/customer stories. Now let's look at this amazing one showing how Heathrow Airport has used these solutions to make a difference.
I don't just want to make a living, I want to make a difference. When I left school at 16, my dad was working in Heathrow at the time, and this opportunity came up as becoming a security officer. I thought, what a great opportunity, my dad used to take me here to watch seaplanes and everything, so why not work for a company or an airport like Heathrow? I've been a security officer for 13 years. When I saw the amount of paper and time we were spending, I saw an app would be a great solution for these problems to be solved. About a year ago, I started learning about the Microsoft programs. I went home and I looked at a blog from Power Apps, and it said, this is how you can build an app. And I thought, why doesn't no one know this? Because this could have so much potential to change so many things. We have saved 11,000 sheets of paper and saved around 288 hours of manual input data. Going from paper to digital has been amazing. It doesn't matter what your skill levels are like, anybody can build this app.
Him with his community of super users have created 17 Power Apps that are already being used across our airport, and this is just the tip of the iceberg.
My name is Sam Ethani, and I'm a IT user adoption specialist at Heathrow. There's no limit what you can create with new technology. I'll create a new career.
It's really amazing to see how Samit was able to look at this problem he was experiencing every day and make a real solution to really help others. I have confidence that many of you will have the tools that you need to make change as well. So let's take some time going over how to build a Canvas app. In this lesson, I'm going to go over the basic elements of Power Apps. And after getting familiar with these elements, I'll show you what it looks like to create an app. Then we're going to take it one step further and check out how to customize the app and configure your app settings. Let's start with the basic elements of building your Power Apps. We have a lot of options and components that you'll want to be aware of. These include screens and inputs. We have galleries and forms and more. In the following slides, I'm going to go over each one of these components in more detail. We have Power Apps Studio, App Format, Galleries, Forms, Input Controls, Intelligent Controls, and Functions. I'm going to start with Power Apps Studio because this is where you will build your app. And it's probably pretty familiar if you've ever used PowerPoint or Excel. On the left-hand side, you have all of the screens for your app. At the top, you have your format bar, and you also have a formula bar, just like you would find in Excel. And on the right-hand pane, you have all of the advanced features. You'll have full control over the appearance of your app, as well as navigation and data integration. Now, just before you get into the studio, you'll need to select your app format. And this is where you can choose tablet or phone. But keep in mind, your app will work on the web regardless of the format you choose here. I tend to think of this in terms of portrait or landscape. The phone option represents portrait, and landscape is your tablet option. Now, if you're like me, sometimes you need a little bit of inspiration before you can get started building something from scratch. This is where templates come in. You can use them as a model for an app that you want to build, or you can even start building your app directly from inside of the template. And this is where I would recommend that you take some time to explore, because you may not need to create something from scratch. There's a wide range of solutions across industries and departments that our templates already address. If you're in human resources, you can start with the onboarding tasks template. Or maybe you're in real estate, you can create an app from the property management template. And no matter where you're at on your app making adventure, I recommend you look at the Power Apps training app. It's a tutorial on how to build an app from within an app. And then when you build your app, you're probably going to be working with forms. Forms are going to allow you to view, create, or edit a record. And those forms are built right from your data. So if you have an Excel spreadsheet, it's going to factor in the rows and columns, and your users will be able to interact with them. And this works the same for SharePoint or Dataverse. Everything is designed to get you started building faster. As a matter of fact, if you decide to start your app from a data source, you'll already have 3 screens built for you that are going to include the most commonly used functions. Next, we have input controls. We know that not everything in your app is just going to be text. Sometimes you need your users to select a button or a drop-down. Maybe you need them to pick a date or check a box. You can put those anywhere in your app, and you can determine how those inputs impact your data sources. And if you already have these components as a part of your Dataverse or SharePoint, those will be automatically built into your app. So you don't have to make any changes to represent how it works in your data sources. Now, when we talk about intelligent controls, we start with artificial intelligence. You can use the receipt scanner or the document scanner to have object detection for pictures, and you'll also be able to see the count of the objects you have. And all of these artificial intelligence models can be programmed natively without code. Basically, you upload the images, you tag them to tell the system what's in it. So then every time it sees that item in a future image, it's going to be able to tell you there's 3 oranges or 2 lamps. Now, you can do a lot through the drag and drop options in the studio, but you might need some more granular control. And this is where we can use functions. Functions are the glue that binds all of these controls and inputs and data sources together. You can use one or more functions to create formulas in your apps. And these formulas are similar to the language you use in Excel, and you use them for all kinds of actions. For example, sending data to a data source or formatting information. You can even create animations and more. You don't have to take the time to learn any complicated code, but you will want to spend some time learning the logic of the functions. You'll also have some functions like submit form, which won't do very much unless you have the corresponding behavior formula, such as button on select. The combination of these two means that when a user selects the button, then the form will be submitted. Similarly, you can utilize the signals function for a very specific purpose, like finding the location of a device. We've spent some time talking about Canvas apps. Let's take a moment to actually build out an app and see all of these amazing components in action.
In Module 2, we built our table in Dataverse from our Excel sheet. Now, let's take advantage of that and create our app from Dataverse. I'm on the home screen now in my Power Apps portal, and remember, you can always navigate here by going to make.powerapps.com. And right away, we'll have the option to start from a blank app, start from Dataverse, or any of your other data sources. For right now, I'm going to choose start from Dataverse, and this is going to create for me a 3-screen app. Now I need to select my connector. Remember, we have over 450 to choose from, and if you'd like to explore them, we can choose New Connection. So if you need something like Dropbox or Dynamics 365, you can choose those. Now, I already have my Dataverse connected, so I'm just going to select that option here. And then I just find the table that we created earlier. Here I have Contoso College Visits, and then I'll choose Connect. And now Power Apps is making me a brand new app, already from the data that we added from that Excel sheet. We have a wonderful welcome message. Welcome to Power Apps Studio. And if you would like to, you can walk through all of the very, very helpful tips and tricks that Power Apps offers readily. And this is our Power Apps Studio. At the very top, we have a ribbon, which will be pretty familiar to you if you've worked with our other Office applications. This is where we can change things like our input controls or some of the display qualities of our app, like the theme or the background color. And on the left, we have our tree view, which tells me my app has 3 screens to start. And if I select to drop down or expand each one of these options, I'll be able to view the components on each screen. So first we have our Browse screen, which contains our gallery listing the visits from our data. I'll zoom in here so that you can see more easily what our app currently looks like. And if I choose to expand Browse screen, we're looking at our gallery, which is referencing our data first data set. Now we also have a detail screen, and this is going to display the details of our specific entries that we would select from our gallery. And then we also have our edit screen. So that's where we will be able to make or add new entries. Now on the right, you'll see that we have a panel that provides the option to adjust any items that we've selected. So for example, if I select a text box on this screen, then I have the option to change the parameters like the size or the position or color of the text box. Now, before we make any changes, let's see what our app looks like. I'll just navigate right back to the home or the browse screen. And then in the upper right-hand corner, I'm going to choose the play or preview the app. You can also just select F5 on your keyboard. From here, I can explore all 3 screens. And again, this is our main screen displaying our gallery. When I select the plus icon, it takes me to screen 2. I can choose to go back by selecting the X. And if I choose to a specific entry, then it's going to take me to our details screen. So those are the 3 screens that are already pre-built in my app based on the data that we provided from Dataverse. Now, I already see an area of opportunity to improve our new app. So I'm just going to choose Escape here, and then I'll make some changes in my studio. I also want to point out this friendly reminder. You can test your app right on the canvas by holding down the Alt key to activate the buttons and other controls. You can also double-click to type into any controls. As you're building your own app, again, you'll have all of these tips and tricks in your Power App Studio as well. Now, I already saw an area of opportunity to improve our new app. So I'm just going to make some changes. Right here, we're on our detail screen. Everything looks okay so far. But on our browse screen, I noticed that it's a little difficult to see the title. So I think it'll be a better experience for me to change that font size here to make it visible. So I'm going to select the text box, and you'll notice again on the panel on the right-hand side, I have some editing options that are unique or specific to that text box. I'm just going to change the font size to 24, and that's already better. I also want to make it easier to navigate around here in my studio. So I'm going to give a more intuitive name for my screens. I can do that by choosing the 3 dots next to the name, and then I'll choose Rename. In this case, let's call the first screen Main Screen. I recommend practicing good naming conventions anytime that you create a solution. This will help you out, and it'll also help anybody else that you need to collaborate with or share your app with, because they'll be able to navigate around and identify different components much more easily. So in this case, we have our main screen. We can change our detail screen maybe to Visit Detail. And then my edit screen, to visit, edit, visit. Now, I want to note that this section right here, the names of these screens, are not going to be visible to your app users. They're still going to be looking at whatever the title of the screen is. In this case, it says Contoso College Visits in our text box. The reason why we made the change here to these screens is as I'm navigating back and forth, I only have 3 right now. But maybe we wanted to change or add additional screens. We really want to be able to navigate in our Power Apps Studio, confidently knowing where to find what we're trying to edit. Now, finally, this blue color is really lovely, but maybe I think I want to choose a different color scheme. So in the toolbar at the top, in our ribbon, we have the option to change theme. I particularly like this option that says Dune because you'll notice that it automatically changes the background color for my screen. It also changes the text color for the labels, as well as the header and the color of the border for my text boxes. Now, again, you have the option to manually edit every one of these items, but changing the theme is going to save you a lot of time and help you to make something that's really visually appealing. Once we've edited the appearance of our app, I've labeled everything clearly, we can choose to test it out. I'm going to select the play button and then edit one of our existing entries. I'll choose the play button here. And then we'll just select our first entry. We have Scott Konersman, and it says that he visited the Union Building. Maybe I actually know that he did not visit the Union Building that day. Instead, he visited our Administrator Building. So I'm going to select our entry here, and if I hover my mouse over the icon, it tells me that it will take me to View Item Details. And that takes us to that third screen. This is our Edit screen. I have the pencil icon to edit the item, and I'm just going to change the building name from Union Building to Administrative Building. We'll choose the checkmark icon to save that, and you'll notice that it is submitting it right now. Now, what's really outstanding is that I didn't just change this here in my app for our visual purposes. This actually wrote back to my data in my Dataverse. We also have the option to change a few more of these components if we would like to, just in terms of viewing what's going to be the most important to us. So I'll choose to go out of my play view. We're back in our edit view, and we're on our visit detail screen. Here I can make a change to our detail form. You'll see that we have a fields icon now on the right, and I can choose edit fields. And right now the fields we have listed are name and created on. For our app here, the goal is to create or edit existing visits. The information about when it was created isn't particularly relevant. So I can choose to remove that by selecting the 3 dots. I'm going to choose remove. And then I'm going to select these 3 dots for more actions. I can add a custom card or I can collapse. But right now I'm just adding a field. And what's really important is when the visit actually took place, right? So we can have our actual start and our actual end. And I'll select to add those. And right away, you'll notice that we've edited the form. So when our users access this application to go add a visit, they're going to be able to now enter actual start and actual end. And you'll be able to make these changes in your data set in Dataverse. I'll show you what it looks like in our model-driven app. So for right now, I think we're set to go. What I do want to verify is the change we made earlier did in fact reflect in my Dataverse. So I'm going to go back to my Power Apps home, and we'll check our columns out there. I'll select Dataverse and then Tables. And remember, the table we've been working in this whole time is Contoso College Visits. We'll go ahead and expand to see all of these rows. And if you remember, we were looking at Scott, and his visit was actually in April. So here we have all of the record of Scott's visits. And there it is, our administrative building. So once again, our app isn't just tracking information inside of the app. All of the changes that we're making, especially since we have imported the data or we've connected it to our Dataverse, are reflecting back in our original data set. I hope that this demonstrates how easy it is to create a Canvas app that enables you to not only add new entries directly to your Dataverse, but also to edit them easily. Contoso College is on its way to a great solution, but we'll explore more options in our next modules.
Now that we have an amazing app, we need to share it with the right people so they can use it. That can be specific users or groups, or even your whole organization. When you share an app with other people, they can run it in a browser or on their cell phone. Now, I do want to point out that they won't be able to download your app directly from the Apple Store or Google Play. Instead, they can download the Power Apps application, log in with their organization credentials, and then run it there. It's kind of like an app within an app. One very important thing that you want to consider before you share your app relates to permissions. You cannot use a Power App to circumvent permissions that might apply to your data source. For example, if my data is being stored in an Excel sheet on my individual OneDrive, if I haven't granted read or write permission to anybody for that file, then nobody will be able to view or edit a gallery or a form that references that document. The same thing applies to SharePoint or Dataverse or your third-party connectors. Now that we've learned about Canvas apps, let's take some time to go over model-driven apps. In this lesson, I'm going to go over what model-driven apps are and how they're different from Canvas apps. We'll also talk about the building blocks of model-driven apps, how to create and design them, and then finally, how to change security and share them. Let's get started. Model-driven app design is a component-focused approach to app development, and it doesn't require code. The apps you make can be simple or complex. Now, unlike Canvas app development, where we have complete control over the app layout, much of the layout is determined for you already with model-driven apps, and it's largely designated by the components that you add to the app. Model-driven design uses metadata-driven architecture so that designers can customize apps without writing code. In order to model your business data, you just determine what data the app will need and then how that data will relate to other data. Defining and enforcing consistent business processes is a key aspect of model-driven app design. Consistent processes help ensure that your app users can focus on their work and not worry about having to remember to perform a set of manual steps. Processes can be simple or complex, and they often change over time. And finally, after modeling your data and defining your processes, you build your app by selecting and then setting up the different components that you need in the app designer. A model-driven app consists of several components that you select by using the app designer. The components and component properties become metadata. First, you start out with your data. That's going to include the terms that we talked about earlier, tables and columns and relationships. Once you have your data, you'll start building that user interface, which determines how users are going to interact with the app. And then you want to consider logic. The logic components determine what business processes and rules and automation the app will have. You might use different logic types, including business process flows, or workflows, or actions, business rules, or flows. And finally, the visualization components determine what type of data and reporting the app will show and have available, and which designer is used to create or edit that component. Visualization options include charts, dashboards, or you can even embed a Power BI report. You might decide to use one or all of these options in your model-driven app. When you look at the design of the model-driven app, it looks very similar to our Canvas app. However, there are some key differences. Although we have navigation options on the left, you might notice it says pages instead of screens. Additionally, instead of customizing the appearance of our app through the formula bar, the design is determined by the pages we choose to have visible in the app. With model-driven apps, the name says it all. Your primary design goal is to get your Microsoft Dataverse data model in order. And with that in place, you just connect it to your Power App, and a model-driven app will be created for you from that model. Now that we've gone over some of the fundamental components of a model-driven app, let's go over what it looks like to build one.
We're going to continue to build out our solution for Contoso College. We have our amazing Canvas app that will let us schedule and edit our visits, but now we need an option for our back office campus staff to manage visit records across the entire campus. The best way for us to do that is with a model-driven app. Before we get started on making the app, we want to make sure that we have the right forms in place. So I'm going to go back to our Dataverse and then I'll select Tables. Now I'll open up my Contoso College Visits table. And now we're going to go to a new place, our Data Experiences. From here, I'll select Forms. And I already have some that have been added by default. Now I'm going to focus on my main form here. And the main form provides the main user interface for viewing and interacting with table data. So it's really important that we make sure this one is right. Now, from here, I already have some components added to my form. I'll zoom in so that we can get a better look. You'll notice that these are from my table rows. I have scheduled start and scheduled end. I also have name and then owner. So when my administrators are going to interact with this form in the model-driven app, they'll be able to add those to the visit. And you'll notice those are listed as required. You might remember in Module 2, I showed that you can choose to make certain data in columns required or not. If I'd like, I can add other components as well from the table columns list on the left. For example, I can add the actual end by just clicking on it. And you'll notice it adds it automatically to my card or to my form. If I'd like to, I can add my actual start as well, but you'll notice they're kind of out of order now. So what I can do is drag and drop to change those if I need to. Now we have one more that's going to be very important. This is our visitor lookup, and I can actually just drag it over wherever I would like onto my form from the left. Now, although I do have customization options here, I want to point out that the controls aren't as granular as in the Canvas app. For example, I don't have to worry about the font or box size here in my model-driven app. The main focus is how the users, in this case our college administrators, are going to be interacting with the data. Now, I also have some ways that I can make this more intuitive. For example, we have owner, and this is actually going to be a great place for us to change to host. So the person who is actually hosting the visitor to our campus. And we can make these changes throughout, so we can also change name to visit name. And that eventually is going to impact the view for our model-driven app. So this is our form. We'll go ahead and choose to publish this, which simultaneously saves it for us. And then we'll be able to create our model-driven app, and then we can include the form for our administrators to interact with it. We'll just go back in the upper left-hand corner. And from here, I'm going to select Create. And now we're going to create a blank app. And I have some options. The one that we're looking at for right now is our model-driven app. We'll choose Create. And then I'm going to name it Contoso Campus Visits. Now, this process goes pretty quickly. My application is currently blank, but I can change that just by starting to add a page to our navigation. I'll choose Page, and I have three options: table-based view and form, dashboard, or custom. Well, if you remember, we just took some time to edit our form in our table. So I'm going to keep the first option and then choose Next. We'll select an existing table, and we're working with the same data that we have been, Contoso College Visits. Now, another important component that I'd like to add here is the option for our administrators to add new visitors, either to the contact list or add existing visitors. So I'm going to add another table here as well for contacts. We'll see that we have both of those selected, Contact and Contoso College Visits, and now I'll choose Add. And there we'll see some pretty familiar data. These are our existing records from our Dataverse. Finally, we want to make sure that our app is easy to navigate for our users. So we have some options to change what our users are looking at, and that'll be on our left-hand pane in navigation. So I have my contacts and I have our Contoso College Visits. Our administrators are going to be able to interact with those. We do have a default table here, sub area 1, that we don't really need for our app purposes. So I can choose to remove that. Additionally, on the left, you'll notice it says Group 1. That's not very intuitive, so I'm just going to select our group name, and we'll change the title here to Visits. Now, again, you'll notice in our model-driven app, we don't have as many options in terms of editing these components. We can, of course, interact with our data, and you might actually find this to be pretty familiar if you've already used tools like Dynamics 365. So I've got my group, I've got my title change here. We have our forms for our users to interact with. So let's see how this plays out. The first thing we need to do is publish our changes, and if I choose the play option from here, it'll actually tell me that I need to publish them before we can continue. So I'll choose Save and Continue. And while we're waiting, I want to highlight right here on the left-hand navigation pane, this is where we can choose to add additional pages, and we can even change the order. So for example, if I would like Contoso college visits to be higher up on the list, then I can do that. It's not really a big deal for right now because we only have 2 pages, but if your app gets really immersive, or if you have a lot more components or data that you're working with, then you may want to make sure that the order is the most accessible for your users. Well, now we have it saved, and just like our Canvas app, we can interact with it. I'm going to choose the play option, and I can view our contacts, and then I can create visits. So let's go ahead and do that. We will go to our Contoso college visits here. I'm going to select a new visit at the very top. And one of the things I also really appreciate about the Power Platform interface, if I hover my mouse over an icon or an option, I get additional helpful information. In this case, it tells me I will be creating a new Contoso college visits record. So I'll go ahead and select new. And this looks pretty familiar. This is the form that we were building out earlier in our table. So in this case, we'll go ahead and add a visit name. I'm just going to name it our new visit. The next option we have is our visitor. And remember, this was a lookup component. And then I can select a visitor from our existing contact list, or what's really brilliant, I can even create a brand new contact. So I don't have to go to my contacts table and then create the contact and then go back and add the contact to our visit. I actually have this streamlined process right here. That's going to save your campus administrators a lot of time. I actually already have a demonstration contact. We're going to just choose Contoso Demo from here. And of course, we're scheduling a visit, so I can choose our scheduled start. And then I can choose our scheduled end. Now, something else I'd like to highlight, this data type or date is what's reflecting, or it is reflecting what we selected when we added this into the table. If you recall, I had the option to choose date and time. In this case, I didn't select date and time, but that might be relevant to your scheduling for your visits. So what you can choose to do, even after your table's been created, we can go back, we can change it to include the date and time if we would like to. Similarly, currently, actual start and actual end are not required fields. If I would like them to be required fields, then I can change that in my data set under our table and column options. Once I've added the correct information here, I can choose Save and Close. And we're set. We now have our contact. If I created a new contact, it would show up in my contact list. And we have a new visit scheduled. We'd be able to find this visit in our Canvas app as well, because they're both writing and reflecting the same Dataverse data set. We now have an amazing model-driven app just for our Contoso college administrators.
Now this concludes module number 3, where we talked about Power Apps. I hope that demo of model-driven apps and our previous demo of Canvas apps really helped you to imagine what you can do. And what I want you to really take away from this module is that users of any technical level can build apps that improve business processes. You don't have to be a developer or learn a new coding language in order for you to make something that matters. I also want to highlight the flexibility of the different offerings in Power Apps. You can create Canvas apps from scratch or starting from your own existing data, or you can build model-driven apps depending on what you need. There's also flexibility for your users. They're going to be able to access your applications from web or mobile, and they can be embedded or standalone. And finally, keep in mind these differences between Canvas apps and model-driven apps. Your Canvas app will give you full control over how your users interact with the app. You can customize the interface and then connect to multiple data sources. On the other hand, your model-driven app lets you build an application from your Dataverse instance. The screens that populate your application are scalable and they're really easy to create. We're going to take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back for Power BI. I will be finishing up the Power Platform, starting with Power Automate. Then we'll explore Power BI and wrap up the day with Power Virtual Agents. Without further ado, let's get started with Power Automate. In this day and age, with so many people working around the world, working remotely, we don't really see individuals delivering forms by hand from office to office for approvals. Additionally, in a world of increasing distraction, it's more important than ever to reduce repetitive or menial tasks so that we can focus on all of the other things that we'd rather be doing in our jobs. And this is where Power Automate comes in to save the day. We have hundreds of connectors and templates at hand, which means that you can write flows and get back to spending your valuable time on the work that you love. Now, before we get started, I just want to make a note that you may previously have known Power Automate as Microsoft Flow. In 2019, Microsoft Flow was renamed to Power Automate. Of course, Power Automate will still create workflows, but it does a lot more, which we'll see soon. I just wanted to point this out because you may still see some content or references to Microsoft Flow. This module is pretty straightforward. We're going to start out with an overview of Power Automate, and then we'll get to build an automated solution. I know that I've mentioned before how easy it is to get started with the Power Platform in general, but I believe Power Automate is the easiest and fastest of the tools to start building solutions. In this lesson, we're going to explore, understand, and learn about the business value and features in Power Automate. We'll also see how Power Automate works and looks from the user's perspective. And finally, I'll introduce you to another customer story with TrueGreen. Power Automate can do a lot of things that not only save us time, but also that help make processes smoother. For example, instead of downloading email attachments and then uploading the file to a database, we can automate that task. Or maybe you have a new purchase order and it needs to be signed for approval. It can be an annoying process to have to manually send that request to your manager every single time. Or if you have to log daily numbers, Power Automate can not only guide a new user through the process, but it will also be able to save you time going back and forth between systems by connecting to all kinds of data sources. And of course, another huge benefit lies in the fact that it also helps reduce issues that might come about due to human error. Let's do a review of what Power Automate offers. First, we have automation at scale. There are many common solutions that organizations need. So we have lots of pre-built templates, so you'll rarely have to create anything from scratch. And of course, end users and your professional developers alike are going to find flows to help in their day-to-day tasks. And even if you're in a hybrid environment, you're able to automate your solutions across your on-premises and cloud services. Now that's all really cool, but it doesn't mean much if it isn't secure. You can securely integrate automation at every level, which means your IT administrators can be available for other tasks. You can accelerate productivity and focus more on strategic work by minimizing repetitive, manual, and time-consuming tasks. In other words, your team is going to have more time because they'll be able to get started with tools that are easy to use, templates, and hundreds of connectors for the services they're already using. And finally, you have intelligent automation. This is where AI can augment your business processes by understanding not only the content, but the context around that automation. For example, it can identify if something is an invoice based off of a model defining what an invoice should look like. From there, the important information can be captured and then entered into another system. Let's go over an example of how you can do a purchase order approval. Approvals are a great place to build in Power Automate because they're often defined, but they're still manual. Or sometimes with approvals, you have to approve everything in different systems. You might have your travel expenses in one system for your team, and maybe you have vacation requests in another system. So as a manager, being able to not only build your workflow more efficiently, but being able to approve everything from a single place is a huge way to save time. So here, a user can start the process by going into Power Apps and creating a purchase order request. Once they submit their request, the information is sent via Power Automate Flow. The flow can be built to evaluate the request and then route it based on different criteria. In the example on the right, we can see that it will be routed to the user's manager, which is automatically retrieved from Azure Active Directory. So once we have our request from our employee, then it's routed to our manager, and here we have some options. We can see on the right, if the manager does not approve the request, then the requester is just going to get an email. However, if the manager does approve, then our flow is going to check if the requested amount is over $10,000. Now, this is an example of conditional logic, which mostly shows up as if-then statements. So if it is over $10,000, then it has to go to a VP for review. Otherwise, if it is not over $10,000, then our flow will end and our requester will get an email letting them know that it was approved. Now, Power Automate can do a lot more than just approvals. We actually have 3 different types of flows. The very first one is cloud flows. These are going to be built with a trigger and then one or more actions. Since we have so many connectors, we also have a multitude of triggers and actions available. For your cloud flows, they can be instant, automated, and scheduled. I'll go over these more in detail in the second part of this module. Next, we have business process flows. These flows are built to work with model-driven apps and Dataverse, and we can use them to create a guided experience in your model-driven app. And finally, we have desktop flows. These were previously known as UI flows. Desktop flows are considered robotic process automation, which means you can record yourself performing actions on your desktop or even within your web browser. Then you can trigger that flow to perform that process for you. You can also pass data in or get data out of the process, which lets you automate what would be a manual business process. You can also add artificial intelligence to your flow with Azure Machine Learning and Cognitive Services. Currently, there are 4 available AI models available to build. Form Processor, this model extracts text from an uploaded image or a photo that you might take. Then we have the Object Detector model, which identifies objects from an image and then provides a count of the number of objects present. We also have Prediction, which predicts whether something will happen or not based on previous data history. And finally, Text Classification. This model categorizes text by its meaning, making it easier to analyze. And you'll be able to access all of these from flow.microsoft.com via a wizard. Now, before you start building your own flows, I want to mention our customer stories again. Customer stories are a great way to get inspiration on how organizations are using Microsoft tools in the real world. You can find this customer story about TrueGreen and others at aka.ms/customer stories. Let's take a look at how they were able to improve their business processes.
One of the values that we pride ourselves on here in TrueGreen is our statement, live life outside. We take this to heart. And the only way for us to do that is to be genuine about it. In the quality and in the timeliness of the service that we provide, And for us, we had to put our customers right in the center of this conversation. A lot of companies are looking into how to improve their consumers' experience. And for us, when we started looking at our transformation, we couldn't ignore technology. And that's where Microsoft came to play. They are truly genuine about the desire to transform consumer experience for companies like us. So it was a great partnership, and it gave me a ton of confidence that I can go through that journey. We have 2.4 million plus customers. They want to interact with us on a channel and time of their choice. And we were able to arrive to how we can architect that experience with Microsoft Power Virtual Agent. It made it very easy for us. The Microsoft team spent a full week with us just to onboard some of my resources and educate them on the platform. Literally 2 days later, we have an innovative chatbot. And the Power Virtual Agent is really beyond the traditional chatbot. We will use it to orchestrate entire customer experiences end to end. I can schedule my service, reschedule a service, add a new service, do a payment, get some tips about how you care for your lawn. We wanted to have the right foundation for technology. That's why we're looking at machine learning and AI to analyze the tons of data that we're capturing and take actions based on that. We're looking into the optical image recognition, which would allow the virtual agent powered by AI to troubleshoot and then schedule a service agent. And we were able to use UI flows to integrate our legacy solutions with the new solutions that we're deploying. It's actually allowing us to grow faster because it definitely bridged that gap for us. The reality is Microsoft made these ideas easy for us to implement. We are not a technology company. I want my team to focus on doing what matters to our business and to the customers. Our ambition is that whenever you talk about your lawn care, whenever you talk about living life outside, you think by default True Green. And we're doing everything in terms of transformation to earn that position.
It's really amazing to get to see these tools in a real situation. And I hope that True Green's story inspires you to build your own solutions. Now, let's take a look at how you can get started building your own flows.
In our previous modules, we were able to create a Canvas and a model-driven app from our Dataverse, giving Contoso College employees the ability to create and track new visits. Now, let's take it up a notch with Power Automate. We're going to create a flow that will automatically send a confirmation email to our visitor when they schedule their visit. Let's get started. Now, I'm back at my office portal, and I'm going to select the All Apps icon in the upper left, or the App Launcher, and then I'll choose Power Automate. Of course, if you'd like to, you can just go to make.powerautomate.com. I like starting from my office portal because I'm already logged in and I'm already using my other M365 and Power Platform tools directly from there. Now, on the Power Automate home, you'll see it looks pretty familiar, especially since we've been working in Power Apps. On the left navigation pane, we'll find all of the different ways that we can interact with our flows. On the home, we have some flow templates. I'll just make this a little bit bigger for you. There we go. We have some already existing flow templates. For example, if you'd like to save Outlook.com email attachments to your OneDrive, or maybe you want to save Gmail attachments to your Google Drive. Remember, we have over 450 connectors enabling you to automate any solution that you need, and we also have hundreds of pre-built templates. Now, for Contoso College, we want the students to be notified whenever a visit is scheduled for them in our Canvas app or in our model-driven app. So we're going to go ahead and choose the option on the left to create. From here, you'll see some things that are pretty familiar. We have the option to create an automated flow, which are automated flows are triggered by a designated event. I can create an instant flow, which will be triggered manually, or in other words, by a button. Now, this can be a button that you actually physically press, so you can actually connect your Cloudflow to a button, or this can be a button in your mobile app or even from the Power Automate system here. And then we also have the option to create a scheduled flow. And that means that we choose when and how often it runs. So we would choose a date or a period of time for that one. Remember, we want the students to be able to receive an email whenever a visit is scheduled for them. So in this case, we're going to be creating an automated flow. Now all I need to do is provide a flow name. We're going to call this campus visit notification. And then I just choose my flow triggers. Now remember, my flow comes in two parts. I need a trigger to instigate the flow, and then I need an action. For this scenario, I'm going to type Dataverse because I want all of the triggers that are related to Dataverse. And then I will select when a row is added, modified, or deleted. The reason why we're selecting this one is because whenever we create a visit in our Canvas or our model-driven app, we're actually adding or modifying a row, or we can even delete it from those two locations as well. So that's going to be the trigger, and then from there we'll select Create. Now I need to build the conditions for my flow. First, I'll need to choose when the flow triggers. Now you'll also notice that Power Automate is giving me some really helpful tips. So if you haven't played around before, I definitely recommend that you look at those. For example, under Undo, we can quickly recover actions just by selecting the Undo button. We also have the option to get help with this action. If we select the question mark, it's going to take me to the community, the blog, and then other resources as well. And you'll see other options pop up as you navigate around for the first time. Now, in this case, again, we need to choose changing the type. This is when our flow is going to trigger. Now, for our Canvas and model-driven app, we're going to be adding new visits. So we're going to make sure that this flow is triggered or our visitor gets an email whenever their record is added. Now I need to choose a table. We've been working with the same Dataverse table this whole time, and we can keep going. So I'm going to type in the name here, our Contoso College Visits. And then finally, I need to select the scope. In this case, I'm going to choose Organization, but if I only wanted this flow to apply to specific groups, I could choose Business Unit instead. Now you might remember from our previous demonstrations, I mentioned that having clear naming conventions is really important. So I'm going to add some more clarity to the name of our trigger right here at the very top. I can select these three dots and then choose Rename. In this case, we're just going to name it to when a visit is added, when a row is added. Now we're going to create a new step. This one is required to retrieve visitors' information, including the email address. So we'll choose New Step. And then I'm going to choose Select Get a Row by ID. This is one of our actions. And this is going to be in our Microsoft Dataverse. You'll notice that it does require a premium connection. So if this is something that you need for your solution, you'll just need to make sure that you have the right licenses. Now the next thing that I need to do is choose my table. And in this case, we're going to select our contacts as our table name. And then I need to provide the row ID. Now, in this case, we have the option to format our data and select different parameters. So when a row is added, the parameter I'm going to select here is our visitor value. The goal of this step is to look up the contact for this visit row that was created to trigger this flow. So this will enable the flow to send the email to the visitor because that detail is stored in the contact table. I've selected my visitor value and it's populated in my box. And then I can choose to edit this one as well. Just for clarity, we'll choose to rename. And I'll rename this one Get Visitor. Get a visitor. Now we have the trigger in place that we need to set the action that will actually send the email to our visitor. So I'm going to choose the next option for New Step. And in this case, we need to search for Mail or Office 365 Outlook. This pulls up a list of all of the potential options that we have. For example, we can create a contact, create an event. Well, we already have our contact, and the goal of this flow is to send an email. So I'm going to choose Send an Email. And next, I need to specify the email address that this reminder is going to be sent to. I select To here, and then I have an option to add dynamic content. In this case, we need email. Of course, our email has to have a subject as well. I think we'll keep it simple and we'll just do our Contoso college visit. And then I need to provide the body of the email. You can make this as detailed or as simple as you would like. In this case, I'll just say, thank you for scheduling your visit. But if you would like to, you can auto-populate the recipient's name as well as the appointment information just by adding the dynamic content for each respective field. Now the flow is complete and we can test it. Let's choose Save first. And as our flow is saving, you'll actually notice I have an error message. As you're learning and growing with our Power Platform tools, you may experience this from time to time. And I just want to let you know, take a deep breath, stay calm. Let's read the error message and see if there's any way that we can fix this. First of all, I know that my flow save failed because there's an invalid workflow trigger name. So when the row is added is not valid. Well, this was all the way back at the very top. So let's go find when a row is added. And then the rest of our error message tells me the name cannot end with a white space character or a full stop. Oh, now you'll see I actually have a period here. And unfortunately, that character isn't allowed here in our flow. The good thing is we know exactly how to fix it. I'm just going to select these three dots. We'll choose Rename. We'll get that pesky period out of there. And now we should be able to save. You'll also see we have the save option all the way at the top. So if your flow gets quite long, you don't have to scroll all the way to the bottom. Once again, errors may happen. I encourage you to just embrace the learning experience because you'll see that there's a lot of really amazing things that you can create just by taking a deep breath and reading these indicators very carefully. We'll choose Save Now. And there we go. Our flow is ready to go, and we do have a recommendation to test it. So the best way to test this is to go back into Power Apps. We're going to create a new visit in our model-driven app. I already have my Office tab open, so I'll just choose my menu again, and then we'll navigate to Power Apps. We're going to visit that model-driven app that we created earlier. So I will go to Apps, and we can see our app type on the right-hand side. We're going to locate our Contoso Campus Visits, and then we have model-driven for our type. I can select it here, and then I'll just choose Play. I'm going to select my Contoso College Visits, and we'll create a brand new visit. Here's our visit name. And then we'll add a visitor. Once again, I already have my contact list. I can choose to add a new contact, but I'm going to select Contoso Demo for right now. And I also want to point out that the goal of our flow we created earlier was for our visitor to receive an email. So I've also made sure that my Contoso demo has an email address that we can test out. We'll choose our scheduled start time, and then we'll choose our scheduled end, and then save and close. So Power Automate is now getting into gear to send me the confirmation email because we've triggered that option we selected earlier where we modify or add a new row. So let's go back to our Office home. We'll check out Outlook and see what our email looks like. And there we have it. We have our Contoso College visit, and it says, "Thank you for scheduling our visit." I also want to point out we already have our Power Automate tab, or we still have our Power Automate tab open. Whenever I navigate back here, we can go back to our flow and we can see the run history. We have our notification that lets me know the flow is ready to go. It's turned on and runs when it's triggered. And if I scroll down, we have our 28-day run history, and it was successful. We've just created a flow that will now notify visitors when our new visit has been added, either in my Canvas app or my model-driven app.
As you can see, getting started is quite easy, but there are still some terms that can be really helpful for you to take your flows to the next level. Let's explore more about how you can build an even better automated solution for you. We're going to take a bit of a deeper dive in this lesson into understanding and learning about templates. In addition to creating recurring flows on a schedule, or my favorite flows, triggered by a button, and finally, business process flows. Trying to figure out where to begin when designing a flow can seem challenging at first. And you might have some questions like, how should your flow be triggered? Or where is the data coming from and where is it going? How do I ensure that steps are being followed as necessary? Templates can take the guesswork out of building a flow, which means you'll be able to get started more easily. Here we have some important concepts you will want to keep in mind when you're building your flows. First, every flow has two main parts, a trigger and one or more actions. You can think of the trigger as the starting action for the flow. The trigger can be something like a new email arriving in your inbox or a new item being added to a SharePoint list. And then you have actions, which are what you want to happen when a trigger is invoked. For example, the new email trigger will start the action of creating a new file on OneDrive for Business. You can also do other things like sending an email or posting a tweet or starting an approval. And there are also different types of actions you can have in your flow. For example, a loop will run an action until conditions are met to move to the next step of the flow. You can also have a switch, which identifies a single case to execute based on the evaluation of input. Do until executes a block of actions until a specified condition evaluates to true. And apply to each is going to execute a block of actions for each item in the input array. And finally, expressions involve an underlying definition that describes the actual logic that runs in your flow that can be manually written. With Power Automate, we don't think of running a flow the same way that we would something like Power Apps. Instead, you perform the activity that triggers the flow to run. In our previous examples, we mentioned that we can set up a flow so that a new email will start the action of creating a new file on OneDrive for Business. We don't have to manually keep an eye on it and run the flow when we see it. Instead, it runs on its own because the flow has a trigger that determines when it should run. Here, we want to consider the different types of triggers. First, we have a trigger of when something changes. Just like it sounds, these are going to run when your data is changed. Now, it could be a new item created in SharePoint, or if a lead is updated in Dynamics, or when an event has been deleted from Outlook, for example. We also can have a flow triggered on a schedule. You can set up that flow to be triggered at a certain time of day and even with a recurrence. So that means that you'll be allowed to create your workflows, like checking in every day at 8 a.m. if there are account renewals pending. And if so, sending an email to the necessary people. And then lastly, we have flows triggered on a button press. This trigger takes shape in many different ways. This can be when a flow virtual button is run through the mobile app, or even if a physical button is clicked with a third-party option, or even when the button is pressed inside of the Power Apps portal in the web. This gives you that control to run a flow on demand. We're going to break these down into more detail in the next few slides. Just like it sounds, our scheduled flow is going to run on a schedule. We can choose what that schedule is in terms of how many times it runs, the date, or even after some time has passed. If we want to build our own, we can just select the option to create a new flow from scratch, and then we just configure the scheduling options. For example, if you want the flow to run every 2 weeks, you just enter 2 in the interval field and then select week in the frequency field. You can also specify the day of the week that your flow should run on. Another handy feature is the text at the bottom of the dialog box. You'll notice that it explains the combination of the different selections in plain language. The next type of trigger is a button. Just like it sounds, it will need to be pressed. In the screenshot on the right, we can see one example of a button flow is send myself a reminder in 10 minutes. So when I push this button in the Power Automate app on my cell phone, I'm going to get that reminder, and then I can select that to be in Teams or Outlook or other locations. I can also just click the button directly in the Power Automate for web. And that concludes Module 4, all about Power Automate. This is a really amazing tool that allows you to bring automation to your business processes. And you have the flexibility to make the flows that are going to benefit your business the most. We went over the different types of flows that you can create and about how you can find some excellent examples in our customer stories. And we also went over the different types of triggers, including scheduled flows and buttons. We know that one of the primary benefits from Power Automate is to save time. And I hope that you were able to find some solutions here that save you time in your day-to-day. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back for Power BI. As we've gone throughout our modules, I've mentioned data over and over again. Now, for Power Apps, you're usually going to be working to add or edit your existing data. Next, in Module 5, we're going to talk about Power BI, which is one of the most powerful tools in data analytics. It can connect to and visualize any data using the unified, scalable platform for self-service and enterprise business intelligence. You'll be able to bring beautiful, interactive data to users and gain deeper data insight. We're going to take a closer look at Power BI in these two lessons. First, we'll introduce Power BI and describe the business value and features. We'll also see how it works and looks from the user's perspective. And then we'll go over how to build a simple dashboard. Okay, here's another big question. What is Power BI? The business world is increasingly data-driven. Small and large businesses use data to make decisions about all kinds of things, ranging from sales, hiring, goals, and basically anywhere they have data. While the data might be readily accessible, it can be intimidating to try to understand without a background in data analytics or statistics. And even if you do understand the data, it may be even more challenging to make it easy to understand for others. That's where Power BI comes into play. By connecting to one or more of the hundreds of existing data sources, you can turn your unrelated sources of data into coherent, visually immersive, and interactive insights. In other words, Power BI provides a visual layer of analytics on your data. So if you're working out of a Microsoft Excel workbook, or maybe you have a collection of cloud-based and on-premises hybrid data warehouses, Power BI lets you not only easily connect to those data sources, but you'll also be able to clean and model your data without affecting the underlying source. The goal is really for you to be able to visualize and discover what's important, and then share that with anyone or everyone you want. Let's go into some more detail on some Power BI concepts. These are some of the building blocks of Power BI. First, we have capacities. Capacities are a core Power BI concept representing a set of sources used to host and deliver your Power BI content. Now, these can be either shared or dedicated. A shared capacity is shared with other Microsoft customers or users, while a dedicated capacity is fully committed to a single customer. You might want to note that dedicated capacities require a subscription, and by default, workspaces are created on a shared capacity. Workspaces are containers for dashboards, reports, data sets, and data flows in Power BI. Now, we have two different types of workspaces. There's My Workspace and Workspaces. I think of those as a general workspace. My Workspace is the personal workspace for you to work with your own content. And even though you only have access to it, you can share dashboards and reports from your My Workspace with other users. On the other hand, if you want to collaborate with others, or maybe you want to create an app, then you will want to work in a workspace or that general space. Workspaces are used to collaborate and share content with colleagues. You can add colleagues to your workspaces and then collaborate on your dashboards and reports and data sets. Now, I do also want to make a note that all workspace members need Power BI Pro licenses in order to be able to interact together. Next, we have data sets. A data set is a collection of data that you import or connect to. Power BI lets you connect to and import all sorts of data sets and bring all of it together in one place. Data sets are associated with workspaces, and they can also source data from data flows. Data types is pretty straightforward. Power BI has the ability to analyze all types of data. When it comes to shared data sets, we want to consider that business intelligence is a collaborative activity. It's important to establish standardized data sets that can be considered as one source of truth. When expert data modelers in your organization create and share optimized data sets, report creators can start with those data sets to build accurate reports. Therefore, your organization can have consistent data for making decisions and a healthy data culture. Another key concept is reports. A Power BI report is one or more pages of visualizations, such as line charts or maps or tree maps. Power BI can create reports when you connect to data sets from Excel, Power BI desktop, databases, and software as a service applications. When you open a report, it opens in reading view. But if you have the edit permissions, then you can see the edit report in the upper left-hand corner. You'll be able to view the report in editing view and make any changes you'd like. And finally, we have dashboards. A dashboard is a single canvas that contains tiles and widgets. You'll be able to create dashboards in the Power BI service. You can share your dashboard with your colleagues, or they can share theirs with you. In dashboards, people can see all of the information they need in one glance. Users can also create a personalized view of a larger dashboard and show all of the metrics that matter to them. For example, if you're working on a specific product team, you may have a dashboard that shows metrics for an entire group of products. But you can create a personalized view to show you information about the product that matters to you. Now, if you're working with any data maintained by a Microsoft partner app, template apps will be very useful. They're designed by our partners to help you use their services better. Template apps are submitted to the Partner Center, and if they pass the review, they become publicly available in the Power BI Apps Marketplace. Installing a template app is pretty straightforward. In the Power BI service in your web browser, you just select Apps, followed by Get Apps in the navigation, and that takes you to the Power BI Apps Marketplace. From there, you just select Template Apps or Browse to find the one that you're looking for. And when you do find it, you just select Get It Now and then Install. On the other hand, if you are a Power BI partner, then you can create a set of out-of-the-box content for your customers and then publish it yourself. Now let's talk about something pretty crucial for Power BI to operate, and that's your data. As you can see, you have so many options for where you can get your data from. Those include Excel, Azure Data, and other software as a service providers like Facebook or even Google Analytics. Power BI lets you easily connect to your data sources, and then you can clean and model your data without affecting the underlying source. You can also visualize or discover what's important and then share that with anyone or everyone that you want. Power BI consists of a Microsoft Windows desktop application called Power BI Desktop. Also, you have an online software as a service called the Power BI Service, and mobile Power BI apps that are available on phones and tablets. Essentially, Power BI is designed to let you create, share, and consume business insights in the way that serves you or your role most effectively. A Power BI administrator is a key member of a team that also includes Power BI developers, analysts, and other roles. And they'll be able to help support an organization to make sure that critical goals are being met. So let's go over transforming your data into insights. It's pretty likely that teams or different work groups in your organization have data everywhere. And it can be a challenge to sort through that data and turn it into insights that you can do something with. With Power BI, you have a pretty clear process which will enable you to transform that data. You start with getting your data, then you'll analyze it, you'll create your visualizations, and once it's ready to go, you can publish it and even collaborate with others across your entire organization. A Power BI dashboard is a single page. You can think of it like a canvas that tells a story through visualizations. Dashboards can be quickly created by pinning visualizations on reports. A key component of your dashboard will be these tiles or widgets. Users can pin specific tiles from different reports to build their own custom dashboard with information that's relevant to them. And sometimes the fastest way to get an answer from your data is to perform a search using natural language. The Q&A feature in Power BI lets you explore your data in your own words. Q&A is interactive and it can even be fun. Often, one question leads to others as the visualizations reveal interesting paths to pursue. And asking the question is just the beginning. You can travel through your data, refining or expanding your question, and then you can uncover new information, zeroing in on details or even zooming out for a broader view. The experience is interactive and fast and powered by an in-memory storage. Now let's talk about quick insights. If you have a new data set and you're not sure where to start, or maybe you need to build a dashboard quickly, you can run quick insights to generate interesting visualizations based on your data. Power BI will quickly analyze your data and display a special quick insights canvas with up to 32 separate insight cards. Each card has a chart or a graph, plus a short description. Next, you can create custom visualizations. You'll be able to visualize data your way. There is an entire library of fully customizable open source data visualization tools. You can use the Power BI Visuals SDK to create stunning data visualizations based on well-known JavaScript libraries such as D3, jQuery, and even R language support, R language scripts. And if you need to, you can test and debug on the fly and then package into redistributable visuals to use with other Power BI products. Finally, you'll want to share the data visualizations that you've created. Now, you can do that within your organization, or you can deliver them to your clients and customers, or even share them with the world on AppSource. With Power BI published to web, you have a lot of options. You can easily embed interactive Power BI content in blog posts, websites, emails, or other social media. And you can modify your data as well. For example, you can also easily edit, update, or refresh it. Or if you need to, you can just stop sharing your published visuals altogether. When it comes to integration with Microsoft apps and services, you'll have team collaboration through support for Office 365 groups, in addition to seamless navigation to other workloads in Office 365. For example, you can use Excel data and pin live charts to your Power BI dashboard, and even view those Excel spreadsheets through support for Excel Online. And finally, with Power BI Mobile, you can securely access and view live Power BI dashboards and reports on any device, whether that's Windows, iOS, or Android. In other words, you'll be able to monitor your business right from your phone. even if you need to access on-premises data stored in SQL Server or data in the cloud. Power BI Mobile gives you a 360-degree view of your data while you're on the go. And you can rest assured that your company's data is secured with mobile device and application management capabilities with Microsoft Intune. Both Power BI Desktop and Power BI Service come with many out-of-the-box visuals that you can use to discover meaningful insights about your data. You can develop your own Power BI visuals for yourself, your organization, or even the entire Power BI community. You can also edit or customize your visuals, reports, and dashboards using the edit mode in Power BI Embedded Analytics. Additionally, the Power BI Report Authoring Library is an extension for the Power BI Client Library, and it makes it easy to quickly author a Power BI report. Let's take a moment to think about how you can connect to all of the data around you. Power BI Desktop and Excel will enable your users to combine data from multiple sources, even if they have different data types. And they'll be able to do that across on-premises and the cloud. And business analysts can connect to a wide range of data sources. They can cleanse, transform, and model interrelationships between the data. Data is rarely in the right format for analysis. That's why it's so important to have the flexibility to transform and even clean data in order for it to be properly analyzed. Those capabilities are an integrated part of the data preparation experience, which means that your business analysts will be able to explore the resulting mashed up data sets and create beautiful interactive reports or powerful spreadsheets. Power BI also has one of the industry's leading modeling experiences. Business analysts will be able to join data from multiple sources and even together across different types for analysis and to create custom calculations and measures. You'll be able to leverage the same powerful modeling capabilities and in-memory engine as our server technology, SQL Server Analysis Services. And finally, you'll have extended capabilities, which means that if you're familiar with technologies such as R, you can incorporate it into your reports, bringing advanced analytics to your analysis. Both Excel and Power BI Desktop are seamlessly integrated with the Power BI service. That means that you can publish and refresh your live spreadsheets and reports with a single click. This results in ease of access for business users across your organization. So, let's see how the Miami Heat, a basketball team for the NBA, was able to boost their season ticket sales by 30%, saving approximately $1 million on operations.
We make people happy, whether it's a little kid coming to their first game or seasoned folks that have been coming for years. The smiles on their faces when big plays happen, when the act first gets on stage for concerts, that moment is what we live for. And that experience is powered by Adobe and Microsoft. We selected Microsoft because there's no other place where we can go find an enterprise-capable platform to do so many different things. They provide the data warehouse, the Azure cloud, and the Power BI platform that visualizes all of this data that's really mission critical for us. Microsoft and Adobe are the backbone to our customer journey.
It was a no-brainer, the fact that they already had readily available integrations with our existing Microsoft technologies. It was a cinch to really bring it in and be able to move the data from both platforms.
We've got a lot of digital properties. We have Heat.com, AARena.com, MiamiHeatStore.com, the award-winning Miami Heat mobile app, and we want to know what our users are doing across all these different digital properties.
We use the Microsoft Azure cloud to collect and enrich our data so that we can provide it to the rest of the business in a seamless and an automated way.
First, we are scoring every lead that comes into this building, whether it's from mobile ticketing data that we capture, Wi-Fi data that we capture from Adobe Analytics or Campaign, and say, hey, this person would have a high propensity to buy a season ticket, or this person will be a great fit for a retail store buyer.
This data is moved into Microsoft Dynamics so that our reps can ensure that we are on track to drive those leads through the funnel to where we convert them into new customers.
And that's why we selected Dynamics 365 to enable our salespeople to better sell. After we implemented the data warehouse and Dynamics 365, we had a 30% year-over-year increase in our season ticket sales, with essentially the same team on the floor.
All of this information is made available through Power BI so that we can measure our performance, and it's accessible by our ownership, our executive leadership, right down to the guest services rep who's working at the arena events.
Our vision here is we just want to understand our fan. Understanding the fan provides for a great customer experience, but it's also great for our business as well. We now make data-driven decisions rather than focusing on assumptions or the way things used to be done. This has transformed the way we do business.
That story is amazing. Just from visualization or knowing where your data is, you can really transform your organization with Power BI. Okay, now that's enough of me doing the talking about Power BI. Let's take a look at how we can actually build these dashboards together.
Now that Contoso College has a way to effectively create visits through Power Apps and notify visitors about their appointments through Power Automate, we want to be able to collect data about those visits and then visualize them in Power BI. In order to access Power BI, we can also just start from our Office portal and from All Apps. I'll choose All Apps in the upper left-hand corner, and there I have Power BI. You also can navigate directly there by going to app.powerbi.com. And now we're at our Power BI service home, and you'll see that it looks and feels pretty similar to Power Automate and Power Apps. We have our navigation pane on the left, and our home provides easy access to our recent workspaces and data sets and dashboards. On the left-hand navigation pane, you'll also see the option to directly choose Create, Browse, we can view metrics, and we even have a direct link to Microsoft Learn, where we can learn more about how to create effective dashboards and reports in Power BI. Microsoft Learn is an excellent resource to get started. Now, we have our navigation pane I mentioned, and at the very lower left, we have an option that says Get Data. In order for us to be able to create visuals or interact with our data, we need to import our data set first. So I'll select the option here. And since I already have my data saved in my OneDrive for Business, I'm going to choose Files and then OneDrive for Business. Under Files, I'll choose Get, and then OneDrive for Business. We're going to select our Contoso College visits, and then Connect. Now, with just a few very short steps, I was able to set up my Power BI report, and we can take a look at the results. We have them listed here under my workspace. I also can choose from the left-hand pane to drop this down, and I can see if I have existing dashboards and reports. So I'll choose our report here, Contoso College Visits, and you'll notice right away that it's actually blank. The reason for that is because we haven't created any visualizations or any interactions with our data. In order for me to do that, I'm just going to select the option to Edit. And now we have all kinds of options. We have a new panel on the right that says Fields. We also have Visualizations, and then we have Filters. Now, all of these options are going to help me make this an outstanding report for our Contoso College administrators. Let's go ahead and create some visualizations. The first thing that might be useful, we'll go with a simple pie chart. And once I select it, it actually will populate here on my report. And it's gray right now because we haven't connected any data to it, but we can do that in just a moment. We also can just choose to zoom in, or we can increase the size of our pie chart by selecting the corner, and you'll be changing this just like you might a graphic in PowerPoint. The zoom option right here in the lower right hand corner will also zoom in my report or zoom out. Now for our pie chart, we need to add some information. I just need to say what data is going to be referenced in the pie chart. So let's add some information about the building. I'm going to select my visit table here, and then I can click on building, or I can even drag and drop this in the appropriate field. So in this case, I'm going to put it in our legend, and now you'll notice that my report has automatically been affected. Now, I need some information in this case about the frequency. Maybe I want to know which building is going to be the most popular. So then I'm going to take our information about visits right here. I'm going to add it to our values section or field. And there we have our amazing pie chart, and it even titled it Count of Visit by Building. And that might be a little difficult to see. Again, I can just choose to expand it out here, or I can even just zoom in the lower right-hand corner. Now, a report with only one visualization isn't really that informative. So let's go ahead and add another. For this one, I'm going to add a stacked column chart. And you can see whenever I hover my mouse over this option, it tells me what it is. I think it's a really great opportunity to kind of explore how your data can fit into these different visualizations. We'll choose stacked column chart. And you'll notice it actually replaced the pie chart that I had. This is a really important note that I want to make about our Power BI interface. I can choose to Control Z on my keyboard. That's also really well known as undo. And then I want to make sure that anything I'm interacting with, I've selected on the right location on my report. So when I select the option, stacked column chart, it changed the visualization for my pie chart because that's what I actually have selected right now. What I need to make sure is that I click away into the open space of my report, and then when I choose the stacked column chart, it adds it as a new visualization. So just remember, you're learning and you're growing as you move around in your new amazing Power Platform tools, and the undo option is your friend. So now again, I have a chart, but it is gray because we haven't connected any data to it. So for this specific one, I need to have information on the X and Y axes. So in this case, I'm going to drag the start field over to my X axis. And then I'm going to place the visit into the Y axis. Now, something that you may also notice, I already used the visit data in my pie chart. What's really awesome is that they're not exclusive. I can choose to reuse the data to provide different visuals and different combinations with other pieces of information to build out a fully related report. Now, in this case, our chart has created a count of visit by year. Well, I only have data from 1 year, so that's not really providing me with effective information. What I can choose to do is modify this in our x-axis field. So instead of year or quarter, let's make this a little bit more granular. We're going to do month and day. And now as I'm moving these or as I'm adjusting them, you'll see that my data visual is changing. We now have information about August, September, and October. I can also choose to resize this one if I would like to. So I can make my pie chart maybe a little bit smaller, and I can make my other chart here a little bit bigger. Now, let's see if it works. I can click on different building slices on the pie chart. So let's go ahead and select our coffee house. And what's really outstanding is that we can see that impacting the count of visit in my column chart here at the bottom. So I have information that shows me that the coffee house visits make up a relatively low number of total visits from August to October. If I select the same spot on my pie chart, it's going to deselect it, and then I can choose another one. Let's see what our alpine ski house looks like. From that one, also a relatively low number of visits contributing to the total. Now, I also have an option here whenever I hover my mouse over my stacked column chart to drill down. If I click on it, I have this option. It says, I hover my mouse, it says drill down, and it's an arrow. So then if I click on any one of these columns, it's going to give me additional information. So I've clicked on September, and now we've drilled down into every single day in September. There's so many ways that we can make this data engaging and interactive by simply choosing the right visualizations to go with our data. Now, before I do anything else, I want to make sure that I choose Save so that I don't lose my progress. We can find the Save option here in the upper right-hand corner, and our report has been saved. And I can also easily pin this to a dashboard by selecting the pin icon right next to it. If I hover my mouse over it, it also tells me pin to dashboard. I'll select the pin option and it tells me where would I like to pin it. I can select an existing dashboard or I can create a new dashboard. Let's go ahead and create a new one. And I'm going to call this one Campus Management. We'll choose to pin live, and there we go. I can have the option to go straight to the dashboard, but it's also been added into my dashboards option in my lower left or my workspaces right here. We'll make sure we choose Save again. And while we're on our campus management dashboard, you'll notice that I have an option to ask a question about my data. Remember, I'm able to use natural language to interact here and get valuable insights about my data. So I'm going to ask about buildings by number of visits. Maybe I just want to know how many buildings are the most popular or which ones. And now we have a bar chart displaying that information. And if I think this is valuable, I can select in the upper right the option to pin that visual. It's going to ask me where I would like to pin it. I'll choose my existing dashboard, Campus Management, and then pin. Once again, we can go to our dashboard and we can see these changes effective immediately. We have our count of visit by building in a pie chart. We can view the most popular times, count of visit by month and day. I can also interact with each one of these components. And you'll notice that it changes what we're viewing in our other visuals as well. And we have another chart here, count of visit that we generated through asking a question about our data in the Q&A. The Contoso solution is almost complete. Our Power Apps can create and modify visits. Our Power Automate Flow reminds visitors of their visits. And now our Power BI report can tell us all kinds of helpful things, like what is the most popular month for people to visit or the most popular building.
I hope that demonstration of creating a Power BI report based on the data in my Excel spreadsheet helped you to visualize how you can use Power BI in your own environment. Not only can you create different visualizations to represent your data, you'll also be able to create entire dashboards and share reports with others. So, in summary, Power BI allows you to easily analyze, visualize, and collaborate on data. You can also get started leveraging these capabilities to make better business decisions. And you can use Power BI on your desktop to gather and transform and visualize your data. Power BI Desktop is also going to enable you to connect to many different data sources. You'll be able to collaborate and work on the same dashboards and reports as your colleagues. And finally, you can be confident that your data is secure and only accessible by authenticated users, because Power BI service is built on Azure. I hope up to this point, you are imagining all of the amazing possibilities that you have when it comes to the Power Platform. And I am so excited for the last module of this session, which is all about Power Virtual Agents. Power Virtual Agents addresses many of the major issues with bot building in the industry today. Because you have real-time and easy-to-access performance metrics, it eliminates the long latency between teams, recognizing an issue, and updating the bot to address it. And it minimizes the IT effort required to deploy and maintain a custom conversational solution. Power Virtual Agents is available as both a standalone web app and as a discrete app in Microsoft Teams. Most of the functionality between the two is the same, but if you create your app in Teams, it will generally only be accessible by employees. So if you want this to be customer-facing, you'll just start in the web. Here, we're going to describe the business value of Power Virtual Agents. And then I'll go over the essential components that make up Power Virtual Agents and chatbots. Now, I want you to take a moment and think about any time that you've interacted with a bot. Was it helpful? If not, could you imagine what you need to make changes to improve it? And if it was helpful, was it because it was intuitive? Or perhaps it just saved you time where you didn't have to stay on hold on your phone with customer service? You might have interacted with a support bot for your bank, or maybe you've asked a question about a product that you're interested in purchasing. For one specific example, new employees on my team use a chatbot for frequently asked questions. They're able to get the help they need because the bot is built by trainers like them. We know what kinds of questions they'll ask, so we can provide the answers ahead of time in our bot. That also means that our bot's so-called knowledge bank is increasing with each new addition to our team. And there are so many other ways bots can help you. First, you can empower your team members by allowing them to easily build chatbots themselves. Imagine that you have an excellent idea for a solution, but instead of being able to create it right away, you have to wait for a busy team of developers to hear your plan out. And then you have to wait for them to make the time to build it. Maybe you've been there before. Using Power Virtual Agents means that you don't need intermediaries like developers or even experience with coding or AI to build what you know will work. You'll also be able to reduce costs by easily automating common inquiries. That means employees will have more time to deal with more complex issues. And you'll also be able to improve customer satisfaction by allowing customers to self-help and resolve issues quickly. They'll be able to do this 24/7 using rich, personalized bot conversations. We have some key items I'd like to highlight here. First, you'll be able to get started in seconds. Power Virtual Agents is a software as a service offering, which means that you can easily sign up, create your chatbot, and then embed it into your website with just a few clicks. You don't have to worry about maintaining infrastructure or deploying complex systems. You'll also be able to empower your subject matter experts, or SMEs. They'll be able to create chatbots quickly and easily with the intuitive, code-free graphical interface, just like Power Apps and Power Automate. It's also important to consider the value of natural conversations. End users will be able to have multi-turn conversations that feel real and quickly guide them to the right solution. And this is all because of the powerful conversational AI capabilities. Another major benefit here is that you won't need to retrain AI models. You'll just provide a few short examples of the topic that you want the chatbot to handle. Then you build the conversation using the graphical editor, and your chatbot is ready to handle the customer requests. There's even an option to test your bot, which means that you can try out your changes in real time. Not only are chatbots great for providing information, like frequently asked questions, they can also be designed to take action. You just integrate with services and backend systems out of the box, or you can through hundreds of easy to add custom connectors using Power Automate. This makes it simple to create a chatbot that not only responds to the user, but also can act on their behalf. Now, of course, you want to make sure that your bot is doing exactly what it's designed to do. And that's why it's important for you to be able to monitor and improve your chatbot performance. You'll have access to powerful metrics and AI-driven dashboards, which means that you can easily see what topics are doing well and even where the chatbot can improve. And finally, Power Virtual Agents works hand in hand with Dynamics 365 Customer Service Insights to provide a holistic view of your customer service operations. You can use Customer Service Insights and Power Virtual Agents together to determine which topics are trending or maybe which ones are consuming more support resources, and then you can easily automate those. Although Power Virtual Agents are pretty easy to start and work with, let's talk about some of the components that will make up your Power Virtual Agent. The first one we'll start with is topics. A topic defines how a chatbot conversation plays out. You can author topics by customizing templates, or you can even create new topics from scratch. There are even a lot of existing resources or help sites that can provide you with some suggestions. I recommend that you take a look at our community forum at powerusers.microsoft.com. A topic will also have what we call trigger phrases. These are phrases or keywords or questions that a user is likely to type that is related to a specific issue. The AI then uses natural language understanding to parse what a customer is actually typing and then find the most appropriate trigger phrase. Your bot will also have what we call conversation nodes. These are what you use to define how a chatbot should respond and what it should do. For example, your customer might type open hours into your chatbot. That's the trigger phrase. The AI will be able to match that to the store hours topic and then begin a conversation that asks which store the customer is interested in. That is the conversation node. And then after the customer replies, the bot will display the hours the store is open. Now, we have two different topic types. And when you create a chatbot to help you get started, a number of topics will actually automatically be created for you. The first type we have is user topics. When you initially create your bot, there will be 4 pre-populated user topics that are titled as lessons. You can use these lesson topics to help understand simple to complex ways of using nodes to create chatbot conversations. The first lesson has you create a simple topic. And then in the other lessons, you'll start adding other components like conditions and variables. Another useful feature is the topic checker. This lets you know if there are any errors in your topics. You can turn topics on or off so that they don't appear to people chatting with your bot. And you can even copy or duplicate topics to make it easier to create new ones. Now, you will also have system topics. These are pre-populated topics that you are likely to need during a chatbot conversation. One example is a greeting. Your users might have a variety of ways to initiate the conversation. They might say, hey, or hello, or good morning. Another example is escalate, where your users might type something like talk to agent or can I talk to a human? Now, I recommend that you keep these system topics and use them until you're comfortable with creating an end-to-end chatbot conversation on your own. Finally, I want to point out that you can edit both user and system topics in the same manner as for topics that you create, but you cannot delete them. They'll always be there for you to use if you need them. Now, another big part of chatbot conversations in Power Virtual Agents is natural language understanding. Now, this is the ability for the AI to understand a user's intent. For example, a user might say, I tried to use my gift card, but it doesn't work. With natural language understanding, the chatbot is able to route the user to the topic related to gift cards that are not working, even if that exact phrase isn't listed as a trigger phrase. Now, one fundamental aspect of natural language understanding is to define entities in user dialogue. You can think of an entity as an information unit that represents a certain type of real-world subject. That can be like a phone number, a zip code, or a city, or even a person's name. We have two different entity types. There are pre-built entities, which represent the most commonly used information in real-world dialogues. And then you also can have custom entities. If your chatbot serves a specific purpose that might be unique to your organization, you'll need to teach the chatbot's language understanding model some domain-specific knowledge. You might remember earlier, I mentioned that your bot can do more than just answer questions. It can also take action. And this can be accomplished through Power Automate flows. For example, you can use flows with end-user authentication to retrieve information about a user after they sign in. And you can call flows from within topics. You can even utilize flows that have already been created in your Power Apps environment. Or if it's easier, you can just create a flow from directly within the Power Virtual Agents authoring canvas. Flows typically use variables to input and output information, and then the variables can be used in other nodes within the topic. Finally, when you've built your Power Virtual Agent, you'll want to publish it so that it can be used by your employees or your customers. You can also configure a Power Virtual Agent chatbot to provide authentication capabilities. So users are going to be able to sign in with any OAuth 2 identity provider. That'll include things like Azure Active Directory and a Microsoft account, or even Facebook. And after you have published at least once, you can connect your chatbot to additional channels like your company website or Microsoft Teams or Slack. You can see there are so many possibilities. Now that we've covered all of the terminology, let's take a look at building a Power Virtual Agents bot from scratch.
Now, to build the last piece of this solution for Contoso College. We want students to be able to get information about the building hours on campus before they schedule a visit. To get started, here we're going to navigate back to our Power Apps portal. I'm on my Office portal, and I'll just select my All Apps and then Power Apps. From the left-hand navigation pane, you'll notice that we have an option that says Chatbots. I'll select Chatbots and then Create. Right away, I have the option to build a basic conversational bot. I also have some resources to guide me through publishing my bot, improving with analytics, and finding new topics with AI. I'm just going to select the option here to build my bot. You'll notice now that we've opened up a new window which is a dedicated Power Virtual Agents interface. Now, of course, the first thing that we need to do is name our bot. I'm going to name it Contoso Campus. And you'll also notice that I have the option to select the language for my bot. Looks like I already have Contoso Campus, so let's do Contoso Campus Hours. For the language of our bot, I can drop this down. And of course, that's going to be the language that my users can interact with the bot. And then I'm going to leave it here for English, and then we select our environment. If you recall, we have the option to create other environments depending on our purposes, development or test. In this case, I'm sticking with our Contoso default. Let's just choose Create. You'll notice that our Power Platform user interface has been streamlined to make you, our creators, as comfortable as possible. All of the options for me to create my bot can be found in the left-hand navigation. And it looks very similar to our other tools, Power Apps and Power Automate and Power BI. We're here on our home. We have some options. First of all, I can choose to test my bot. We also have some quick start options. We can choose to edit from here. We're going to first explore topics though. Remember, a topic defines how a chatbot conversation plays out. You can write your own topics by customizing the provided templates, or you can create new topics from scratch. You'll also notice anytime something has changed in the portal or in your interface, you'll get some handy notifications just letting you know about those updates. As you can see, we already have some existing topics. You might recall I mentioned lessons. These are user topics that I can turn on or off by using the toggle on the right. These are great opportunities for you to learn how to create different types of topics. The first one is a simple topic, and the lessons increase with difficulty by adding conditions and variables. I recommend starting out with the lessons. After that, we have a few system topics. I can identify those by hovering my mouse over this icon on the left, and it tells me system topic. Now, these are pre-populated topics that you're likely to need during a chatbot conversation. Using these will save a lot of time, and they include greetings like hello or good afternoon or even goodbye. If we want to examine one of these in more detail, I can see that there are 67 phrases related to our goodbye. And if we click on it, we'll see all of these options here under trigger phrases. Now, we want our bot to be as responsive as possible, so it's important that we include trigger phrases that individuals are likely to use. For example, bye, glad to talk to you, or over 60 other options. Goodbye. Now, let's go ahead and make this bot a little bit better for Contoso College. I'm going to choose the option to create a new topic. That's available right here at the top. In this case, we're going to name it Building Hours. And then we can add some trigger phrases. Now, we do have some additional information here, some recommendations and writing tips. For example, short sentences work best. We want to focus on one issue and then use different words to describe it. And you can vary the parts of speech that you use. Additionally, you don't need to worry about capitalizing words or making them plural or spelling. And you also don't want to use trigger phrases to redirect mid-conversation. If you have a different topic, then you can create a new topic for that and different responses from your bot. So this one is going to be building hours is for our title, and it actually just so happens that that's what we can add for one of our phrases. If you've ever interacted with a bot before, maybe you also don't include or type in full sentences. So if you just want to know what the building hours are, you might just say building hours. We can choose enter, and that's our first phrase. Then we can add a few other phrases. For example, what are your hours? And remember, we don't need to worry about punctuation. I can add a question mark here if I'd like to, but it's not necessary. Or we can say perhaps, when are you open? It's really convenient that I can just type the phrase and then select enter to add it to the list automatically. And as I mentioned earlier, you want to provide as many phrases as you can. The recommendation is 5 to 10 short trigger phrases. Natural language understanding can help identify a topic, but those 5 to 10 phrases are going to be more beneficial for it to gather enough information to relate back to the response. From here, we want to make sure that our bot responds appropriately. We have our trigger phrases. We're going to choose the back button here. We need to choose the save option first. Always remember to save and to save often. You'll also notice that I had a notification that I might have had an error in one of my topics, and that's okay. We can go back and select or correct any errors later on. That also is going to be very helpful whenever we look at our topic checker. Let's do that right now. So I have an error here, and this says to add a bot message. Well, that's actually what we need to do right now. That's this one right here. So we now have our trigger phrases. This is what our user is going to type. And then we need to decide how is our bot going to respond. And you'll notice that we have a few different ways that we can even impact the formatting. And this is going to show up in the response to our user. Well, in this case, we know that Contoso College has many different buildings on campus. And in order for our bot to provide the correct information about the building hours, we need to get some more clarity from our user. So we're going to add a follow-up question from here. I can help you with that. I just need a little bit more information. Now this part, spelling and grammar, does matter because this is what our bot is replying to our customer or our user with. So this is our message, and then you'll notice that I have an option below this to add a node. This is going to give me the different options for our response. From here, my bot can ask a question or add a condition, can even call an action, or show a message, redirect to another topic, or even just end the conversation. From this step, we're actually going to be asking a question, and then we'll add our follow-up question. Which building? Then we can add the building for our user to select. So in this case, we have our multiple choice options, and then we just type in our options for our user. In this case, we'll just choose our Union building, and I can hit enter, and then new topic, and then we'll add our 4th coffee house. Now, you'll notice as I'm moving around in my interface, we're adding a lot more components. I can choose to zoom in and out using these magnifying glass options, and if I click, I can drag my map, so I can see more if I center it. You'll also notice that we have our test bot screen open here. If I'd like to, I can just close that, and that's going to give me some more visual space while we're editing this. So in this case, I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit so we can see better. So conditions we have here are like if-then statements. So in this case, if the user's response to which building is the Union building, then the user will be provided their response unique to that condition. So I'll go ahead and add our bot response here. We're just going to select add node, and then we will show a message. For our union building, it's open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I have the option to add unique responses here as well. So for example, if one of our buildings is closed, we just add that to the message. Let's go ahead and do that for our 4th coffee house. We're going to select to add the note again, and then I'll choose show a message. And then we'll say, sorry, but at this time, the coffee house is closed for renovations. Now let's save our topic and then test it out. As we're saving, remember we have our bot checker here, or our topic checker, letting us know if there are any mistakes or anything that doesn't line up. Right now it looks like we're good, and we can go back home to test it. I'll choose home, and then it says edit and test your bot. Now we have our test bot panel open with all of that list of topics that we were looking at earlier. So let's test it out. We're going to say hello. That's one of our trigger phrases, and that prompts my bot to reply with some information, letting them know that it's a virtual agent, and then what can be helped with today. If you remember, one of our trigger phrases was building hours. And there we have our reply. We typed this earlier. I can help you with that. I just need a little bit more information. And then which building? And because we chose the option multiple choice, we have the option to choose our union building or 4th coffee house. Let's see what happens when I select union building. There we have our hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Finally, I think that Contoso is set up for success with an end-to-end solution across the entire Power Platform. We've created a bot that our visitors can interact with before they schedule an appointment. They can see what the building hours are, and we're saving our administrators a lot of time. Our visitors don't have to call and wait on hold just to know exactly what's going on or if a building is under construction. From there, we can improve our bot even more to take additional action. If you'd like to, you can even have your bot give the option to schedule an appointment. And again, remember, write that back to our Dataverse dataset. Again, Contoso now is set up for success with an end-to-end solution across the entire Power Platform that will ultimately improve their visitors' experience.
Power Virtual Agents lets you create powerful AI-powered chatbots for all kinds of reasons. Maybe you just need to be able to provide simple answers to common questions. Or perhaps you need to resolve issues requiring more complex conversations. No matter how you start, you'll be able to engage with your customers and employees in multiple languages across websites, mobile apps, Facebook, Microsoft Teams, and more. And finally, your subject matter experts will feel more empowered than ever after they create their own chatbots without having to rely on data scientists. That concludes our virtual training day on Power Platform Fundamentals. Thank you for investing in your learning and for taking the time to join me. It's been my pleasure to teach you all about the amazing tools that are a part of our Power Platform. We started off by building our data model in Dataverse, and from there, you saw how easy it is to build responsive and intuitive Canvas and model-driven apps. We also went over how Power Automate can save you time, while Power BI helps you analyze your data. And of course, we wrapped it up with Power Virtual Agents, empowering your subject matter experts to create solutions on their own. I hope that you feel inspired and empowered now to go out and design your own solutions. Good luck and happy building.